I'm sorry, what are we, the? April 2nd meeting of Ways and Means. Yeah, there you go. Please join me for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's my first correction. Do we have anybody here for public participation? Nobody online? All right. Cheyenne's online. And I don't have any announcements, so let's move right into operating budget review. We're revisiting the clerk budget just after some changing and some realigning of numbers. So let's get the clerk out of the way.
Can we put that aside?
I'm sorry.
Let it be noted in the minutes.
Let's get, yeah,
But she's on the other side of the road.
let's handle the clerk's budget.
Much better, Doug.
Number 161 in your handles.
So there was a question about, I don't know if you want me to,
Yeah.
okay. So there was a question about the salaries for the elected and appointed line, and then the part-time salary. I believe that John has forwarded that all to you, so you have the correction. So the elected and appointed for FY '26 will be a category, grade and step of 8-1. And then the additional money has been moved up to the part-time budget, which will be consumed with mentoring, training, knowledge transfer that can happen over the next year. So that's where the $20,895 came from, was the line item of the town clerk's salary, when the steps got brought down to the steps where it'll be starting.
Okay.
I think that was the only question that was up from last time, 2 weeks ago.
Right. Do we have any questions now?
I'll just give the subcommittee report.
Doug, the WebEx is muted.
Thank you. Chris, can you go right behind you and touch that button, the unmute
Just
button
touch
on the screen?
It's a touch screen.
How's that?
Thanks, Cheyenne.
Thank you.
I'll give the subcommittee report. It's 2-0. I also just want to note that the budget dollar amount is the same. It's just categorized correctly.
Thank you. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you. This completely answers my question and makes it a lot clearer. Thank you
Sure,
very much.
no problem.
Do we have any other questions? We have a motion
Motion to approve.
Second?
for $501,532. Okay, so we have somebody online, so we're going to do a roll call. Give me 1 second. All right. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Mike Hardy?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Paul Noonan? No Paul. Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Grasso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. That will be 13-0-0. Thank you.
Well, thank you
Coming back.
guys very much.
Appreciate
It's
it.
been a pleasure working with you over the
We
past
just
15
didn't, we
years.
wanted to get one more meeting.
Oh, that's so nice.
Don't sugarcoat it, Amy, come on now.
Take care.
Thanks.
Okay. Next up is police. welcome. Chief, Deputy.
Chair, thank you.
So we'll let you run through your budget.
Okay,
And then
thank you.
We'll see what the subcommittee says, and then we'll ask questions.
All right, so just starting basically with the cover sheet here as a guideline, the overall budget is going to increase 0.26%, not including the salary line. The major drivers to this budget increase, number one, is going to be overtime. I'm asking for a $10,000 increase in the overtime budget. I would like to, there is a typo in the back of the budget materials on page 10. I should have classified this as unscheduled overtime, but I believe it went into the court line. But it's a $10,000 increase, and the reason for that is, as you are all aware, we're going to be moving over to a temporary station on the Middlesex Turnpike. That building will not have a cell block, so we will have temporary processing only. So if we have a situation where we have to hold a prisoner, and sometimes it could be all weekend, over a long weekend, we then have to monitor that prisoner. So what's going to happen is we have agreements in place with Woburn, Lexington, and possibly Billerica. So if we have a Burlington prisoner that we're holding, we are going to have to send a Burlington officer over to that department and watch our own prisoner. So I can't anticipate what those costs necessarily would be, but I'm comfortable with $10,000 based on conversations I've had with the Lexington police chief, who just went through the same thing. So it's kind of a shot in the dark, but that's what that $10,000 increase is for. The second driver you'll see is under expenses. There's three areas. The biggest one is going to be contracted services. That's going to jump up about $52,000. And the main reasons for that is, number one, the body-worn camera program. So when we originally got the body-worn camera grant about 4 years ago, we were able to go to town meeting and get a warrant article for $222,000. And we also received money from the state to basically subsidize the program, buy the cameras and whatnot. But we knew at year 4, we were going to come off that grant money and have to start to pay for the service. So what we've got is, we've got the contract for services, which is the warranty as well as the storage. And you can see it's expensive. We knew it was going to be, but that's going to account for $30,000 of the increase. Then we also have the annual support and maintenance bump of $22,000, which is it's actually a $45,000 annual support and maintenance fee that's split between police and fire, and that's the Pro Phoenix records management and computer-aided dispatch system. So again, these were all anticipated to come in, and I said at the time that I would add them into the operating budget, and we're at that point where we're adding it into the operating budget. I also had a small increase in the motorcycle lease, as well as a live scan warranty that bumped. The live scan is the fingerprinting system. You've all probably heard of APHIS through NCIS and all the other shows. That's where APHIS comes from. It's the live scan machine. So that is that's a big piece of hardware in our booking room, and we have to pay the warranty to maintain the system. So that accounts for the bumps in contracted services. I've also thrown $1,000 into materials and supplies, and the reason for that is range supplies, as well as the taser and the less lethal training cartridges, because again, where we're moving out of 45 Center Street, we are not going to have a functional range, so we're now going to have to go outside, like to Lexington or Billerica or Bedford or wherever we have to go, so we have to increase those supplies as well. And then capital, again, for probably, the 5th year in a row, we're bumping up because of the cruisers. The cruisers are going up in total about total line item of $17,000, and that includes the cruisers, but as well as the equipment. So as I've said before, every time they change the models of the cruiser, even a little bit, we then have to change all of the equipment in there. So if the back seat contour changes, now the cage changes, and some of the consoles up in the front change, we have to change the radio mounts. So that cruiser line is not only the cars, but it's also the equipment and the lighting and everything else that goes with it. And then finally, special accounts, the education and tuition line, I'm asking for an increase in $3,500. Again, that's to cover the outside range fees, so if we go over to Lexington, we're expected to pay over there because they carry, as you can imagine, high insurance to allow people to go over there and live fire on the range. And we would also have to potentially do shift replacement or pay officers to go over there while they're not on duty. So we're losing the benefit of being able to train on duty a little bit because we're not going to be in the station. But it really should be basically minimal for the 2 years. We'll make it work, but I'm asking for that bump just to cover any unanticipated situations where we have to train officers who are not on duty. It's only a modest increase, and if you've noticed over the past few years, there's certain things in this budget that obviously I took out because we're moving out of 45 Center Street. The firing range, maintenance, and the holding cell maintenance, it didn't make sense to keep those line items in when we don't have the necessity to do that. So that basically took out about $7,000. There's also a line item in there for paints, keys, and locks. The temporary building, I consider it new at this point. Everything is going to be in place. If we have any issues, we'll call them back and we'll fix it. There's really no need to carry extra money in the budget at this point for that. So we were able to offset some of those fees. So that's where we are on the budget, and that's how it comes in. Hopefully I've answered any of the questions for you. But any questions, I'm willing to take.
Subcommittee?
Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support. Trying to think if we covered anything else. Chief, you mentioned moving to the new location, temporary location, so some of that will knock down, as you said, some of the expenses. When you come back to the new building in a couple of years, a lot of the expenses, again, shouldn't be necessary because it's a brand-new building, but you may have some higher costs for utilities and so forth, just being a bigger building, correct?
I'm hoping the utilities actually goes down because the building will be more energy efficient, but what I can see is the firing range, even though we're carrying the components over, we're adding a lane, so I can see that the warranties and the service contracts will probably go up. So I am going to have to carry those expenses back at some point, but I'm hoping that the building will be sustainable for at least my tenure, Mike.
Good, good. From an operational point of view, we were talking a little bit about the dog pound because it's in the budget this year, and it's kind of a new facility that was established, I think, just in the last year. The chief said that's up and running. There's actually a new animal control officer. Everything seems to be operating smoothly and going pretty well where that is. We did have a little discussion on staffing, and I think, Chief, you're down a couple, 2 or 3 people, but we're going to work with whatever we do to get new staff on board.
Right. So actually, I misspoke the other night when I met with the subcommittee. We're actually down 5, with the potential of a retirement coming right on the horizon. And then we've also got, I believe, 3 that could go in any time. Not that I'm pushing the deputy out by any means, but there are people who could go at any time.
Thanks, Bush.
And I have
It's been nice.
And I have another officer who I hear potentially maybe taking an opportunity out in the West Coast. So right now, down 5. Our hope is to get a recruiting drive going this spring. If we're able to get a certified officer, obviously that cuts down on the training time. If we have to do an academy, we're kind of at the beck and call of the academy based on when they open up an academy. And as you know, they're 6 months long. So we are going to do our best to fill some of these voids going forward in anticipation that we potentially could lose some more.
Okay, all right. I think that covers most of the additional discussion we had.
Questions? Who's first? Roger.
This is probably in the minutia, since I've been reading the DPW budget for my other task. There's a line item in there for custodial services for the police station.
Yes.
Will that continue with the temporary facility?
So that actually hasn't been decided. So we have a contracted service in this. This is the last one, so we will carry him through the temporary building for 1 year, but not sure what'll happen beyond that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, just from a budget point of view, it would be cleaner if it was straightened out, so it was done by regular custodial staff, but John's going to...
It's likely that that line will stay in there into the future because it's a 24/7, 365 building. So there is weekend, there is nights, stuff like that. So it's likely, to some degree, there will be something in there to add to that additional cleaning, but
Okay,
to what level, we just don't know yet. There will be, when the new building opens, there will be a custodian assigned to that building, regular custodian, and that will be part of their regular duties, but because of the nature of that building being 365, there was likely to be some additional needs.
okay. It seemed reasonable to me to have requested that be in the police budget, not in the DPW budget, but I'm sure there's some crossover that's important.
Yeah, and I think the genesis of that is that's where the custodians live in the DPW budget, and it was adding to that type of service, so that's probably.
All right, you'll get another chance.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a little question. On the traffic supervisor's salary, it says override lookup. I'm just curious what that is.
Probably a formula issue. It's in the,
On traffic supervisors? I'm sorry, Joan, I'm just not seeing where it is here.
It's off the edge
Oh,
of the
I'm sorry.
right edge.
It's page 5 in the PDF. It's part-time positions under traffic supervisors.
You see it?
It's off the right-hand edge of the page.
Yeah.
So your printer might have cut it off.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have it on mine. Maybe John can, are you going?
And
Oh,
Sorry?
I mean, I'm guessing because compared to all the other people at that same category and step.
No.
Well, no, I wouldn't even say that. Well, I'm not sure what it is. I won't guess.
Well, if we don't get you an answer now, I will get you an answer.
Well, it's a comment in the right of the spreadsheet, right, John?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
my guess is it's because it's the one that's in charge of them, so it doesn't go by the same formula as the rest. But I just want to look it up.
That's what I was speculating, but I just wanted to make sure it was actually intentional and ended up with the answer you anticipated.
is that all you had?
Yeah,
All right.
thank you.
Deb?
On that same page, there's a line item for a mental health clinician,
Yes,
and over to the right, it says ARPA, it looks like it's going away.
yeah.
So is that just a position for this year, or is it going to be?
No, that's actually a full-time position with us. That was a grant, and I think John could talk more about the grant that was helping us pay her the first few years she was here. And then it was, she's a full-time
So the grant
employee right
ended,
now.
now you have
The
to
grants,
put it in the
I
budget.
think it's paying for like 25% of her pay this year,
Okay.
and the grant's running out after this year.
No, this year it's fully funded.
It just, we just printed too far and grabbed our comments for the people that do the spreadsheet to look back. And so we just printed one extra column, but that's what it is, John. It's the,
Okay, but it's the number you want it to be.
yes,
is
correct.
what I
The
want.
number's correct. It's just our.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Same with ARPA. That was partially funded by ARPA in the past, before this year.
So it's gone away, not going away.
Correct.
As of July 1, it's gone away.
All right.
Yeah, so it's fully funded. The mental health position is fully funded by the operating budget in '26.
Yes.
There's no opera money in there.
Okay.
Right.
Steve?
Okay.
So is the salary lines kind of level because the contract is up, or is it,
Yeah,
so it's
yes.
going to be up at the end of June?
Right, so all the contracts in the, we have 3 police unions in the building, or 3 employee unions in the building, and they're all set to expire June 30th. I believe contract negotiations are ongoing for all of them.
Okay, thanks.
Right.
Thank you. The software hardware maintenance went up $55,000. What's that?
So the software and hardware, again, that's where I'm putting in the body-worn cameras and the Pro Phoenix annual support and maintenance.
Okay.
So we're going up 30 for the body-worn camera in year 4, and then the annual support and maintenance that we split 50/50 with the fire department would be the other 24,000 in there.
Okay. So they'll go up too. Okay. One more question. Is there any federal grants that we're getting now that could be in jeopardy? Or do we get any federal grants?
So right now, we do have a federal grant. Nothing that we've gotten has indicated that anything is in, damage of going away. The ones we have right now are the Burn JAG grant, which are, we've already used the money. So, and we're not being told, we actually just expended it during the February vacation, so that is done. But we haven't gotten any advisories that any of them are going away, but at the same time, we try to stay on the state level and the private grants at this point, just because of that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rick?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So when an officer is required to go to court, is that always on overtime? They're paid overtime for that?
It's not always on overtime. However, it most of the time will happen, unless it's a day shift officer who happens to be on shift that we can send over there. Usually, we're sending them on overtime because either we're backfilling that officer's shift while they go to court, or they are on a 4 to 12 or a midnight shift and they're going to court on their day off or their off-duty time.
So you're anticipating that to go up a little bit?
I am, yeah. And a lot of it is based on the raises, but what we're seeing now with some changes in the discovery rules, you're probably all familiar with the Karen Reed trial, and we've got a lot of things that are going on in the background with court. They've just changed what's called the Rule 14 motion, which is discovery motions on officers' backgrounds. So what we're starting to see is a little bit of an uptick in the defense attorneys that are bringing these cases to motions and trials that otherwise they would not have. So we're just trying to anticipate and get ahead of that curve.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris?
So I'm surprised I didn't catch this last year, but I noticed when we're looking at the salaries, they're in two different blocks. You have the one that has the salaries, and then you have the ones that has the incentives.
Yes.
And this really looks like it's the only department that does that. And when I look at like fire, they put in the EMT, education stipends, CPR, whatnot stipends. So they're all straight line items. Is there a purpose for this? And then in the future, can we get them all on one line item so that we can see what officers are making?
I think it was just a formatting thing, because
It is.
if you look, it's 2 full pages.
Yep.
But we can give it a shot to try to squeeze it in there, but still be able to tell what it is.
Yeah, and then the same question I asked with fire was, can we get the pays with overtime so that we can see that as well? Now, another question is with the body cameras, now that we're well into it, how are officers feeling about it, having that as part of now their regular gear?
So as with any new piece of equipment, once they get used to it, it becomes second nature. We haven't had, any issues that the body-worn camera has had to come out to prove that the officer did exactly what they were supposed to do. As a matter of fact, it's probably tamped down complaints, not that we've gotten a lot of them, but it's become second nature. If I went to log mine on, I'm going to have a hard time, but the officers get out there, and it's no different than checking their cruiser. They're ready to go.
Great.
Yeah, and actually, if you've seen them at all, they're very big. They're the size of a large cell phone. But what the body-worn camera company is going to do for us this year is they've gone to a smaller size. So it's going to be about half the size, and it's going to be allowed to go on the outermost garment without modifying any of the uniforms. So you're going to see an improvement in that. We're supposed to receive those in May for no cost. So we're looking forward to that as well, because they are a little bit bulky.
One more?
You sure?
So I said we're still on the 3 cruisers changing out. Is that
Yes.
system still working, still able to keep the vehicles up and maintained?
Yes, it's working very well. So now we have a captain and a lieutenant who are in charge of that, along with central maintenance, and they've just got an excellent system where you can get into any cruiser over there and you know it's going to work, and it's going to be in good shape. But this is an excellent system, and I'd like to stay with it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roger?
I've got a related question. How big's the fleet?
The fleet right now is 34, and that's 14 that are marked, and then there's 7 detectives, and then 7 administrative cars.
Okay. 34. All right, I guess that makes sense. I'm thinking about the new police station and parking, and I'd like to see it smaller, but you need what you need to do your job, so.
Yeah. Some of them are take-home, so they won't be there all the time. But yeah, same concern. Thank you.
Deb?
Special accounts, there's a line item for medical expenses for injured officers.
Yes.
40,000. So is there not health insurance as part of is this something different? Just wanted to understand what exactly it is.
So there is. So what happens is if an officer gets injured on duty, what happens is they'll go out. they'll go to the doctor, they'll pay their co-pays or whatever, but what happens is when it's determined that it's injured on duty, we then are starting to pay the co-pays. We'll pay the physical therapy or the doctor's visits, because under the 111F, which is Mass General Law, it's like an insurance fund, so we've got to be able to pay that out for the officers.
Workers' comp.
Yes, but because they're sworn officers, it's called 111F, but it's the same thing, basically.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? I think I would just add, and the concern is staffing. And we saw it a few years ago, and we kind of feel like it's getting under control with fire, but it leads to so much overtime, and it's such a drain. And it's concerning, because I know you can only hire qualified people, and it's hard to bring people, it's hard to make people want to be a police officer sometimes these days. And are there other departments, are there unique things? Are there anything, are we missing anything? Are there outside recruiting firms that could help? What things we can do?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, actually, because, no, we probably lead the charge in terms of our recruiting because of the way we put our officers into the academies. And it's worked. It's been a very sustainable model. But you can't anticipate certain things. So we've gotten hit with like the injury bug here. We've had an officer out long-term on a knee surgery. We've had another one that was out on another medical. We've had a couple of people that have left. So we've gotten hit in the overtime at this point. And then we've got a couple of people, I guess, who potentially are trying to leave. But what's going to happen right beyond the future here is there is coming down a change in the civil service law. Now, we're not civil service. We came out in 2014. But the change in the civil service law is going to allow a civil service department to recruit up to half of their workforce from contiguous cities and towns. So it's conceivable that, let's say, for instance, the city of Cambridge wanted to hire 10 officers. They could pull 5 from somewhere other than the Cambridge police list. So in fact, that could impact, say, a Burlington officer who then leaves. We have no way to anticipate that, and unfortunately, we just don't have the numbers in the pipeline. So the deputy and I were talking about it today. We are going to get a recruiting exam, an entry-level exam, hopefully set up for June, so that we have that consistent 2-year basis. But what we are finding since 2020 really is the recruitment and enrollment is down. Our best way of getting people is getting into the academies, and that's why we keep our personnel in there. So we're hopeful that we can fill some of these holes, but it is a change scenario coming down the pike.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just along those lines, what is the average officer's tenure? Is that 10 years, 5 years? What?
So, it used to be, 30.
You were here.
30, 47, whatever it is, yeah. Now you're, I think it's system-wide, you're just not seeing it. I've seen estimates come out through like the Mass Chiefs and the International Association of Chiefs of Police that say 10 to 12 years. Because what's happening is they're pushing out the age for a pension. They're making the average a little bit longer. Instead of like a 3-year average, it's 5. So what's happening is you're trying to get these people in and entice them to come in and recruit them, but then you're whittling away the fringe benefits, and they see that. So we haven't figured out how to overcome that, but we're working on it.
All right. Just to follow up on that, Chief, so I was under the impression that, Burlington is pretty desirous for new officers to come to, reputation-wise, and also, like you said, the training academy, we have our guys in there doing a lot of the training, so the recruits become interested in Burlington. So hopefully that will help. Is this staffing issue kind of common in other towns around us as well?
I would say we're in a better situation, even though we're down 5, because we have towns that are near us that are smaller than us by half, and they're down more officers than we are. And it doesn't help when we've gone in and kind of poached some of their candidates, but unfortunately it happens. It's just the way, they'd rather come here, and some, instead of coming here, they'd rather go to the state police. So we're all competing for that pool, but the pool every year is getting smaller and smaller.
Okay.
So we're not in the worst situation we could be, knock on wood. We're better, but we're trying to anticipate the needs coming out 1, 2, 3 years.
Right, okay.
Anybody else? Oh, Steve?
Thanks for the double dip. Quick question, on the incentives, do you find that officers are taking advantage of continuing their education and moving towards higher degrees or more certifications?
So most of the officers that we've brought in have a degree. I can only think of one right now that doesn't, but had prior military. And over the past couple of years, we've had, I believe, 4 or 5 that have continued on to their master's degree. So to answer your question, yes, it is incentivizing them to do it, yeah.
Thank you. Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion to approve $10,583,902. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Campbell? Mike Hardy?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. And so it passes 13-0-0. I do have to, I was probably supposed to say this in the beginning. I think I'm supposed to disclose that my son's a police officer. But I'm allowed to vote on this because we're not voting on their salaries or any big changes in it. So, but I am supposed to disclose it. So sorry I didn't do that ahead of time. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
So we'll move to budget 241, building department.
No, understood.
Welcome.
How you doing?
Great. How are you doing?
Not too bad.
Hi, everybody. Mark Dupel, who's the building commissioner, had to be out of town. So you're blessed with Marty Allen and myself to pinch hit for him. So we have the building department budget is going up slightly by 2.16% or $16,000. On the personnel side or the salary side, it's only contractual changes that are included in that. The head count is the same, which is 7. So department head, 4 inspectors, and 2 clerical staff. There is still down 1 staff unfunded in this budget also from where we were when I first started 6 years ago. So that's going to continue. On the expense side, there's a couple of small increases in one of the line items for some printing materials and some continuing ed costs. And we could answer any questions you may have.
Do we have questions?
We have a subcommittee report,
Oh, I'm sorry.
2-0.
Thank you.
After all that time we spent with the department and strategically going over their budget.
Thank you.
Yeah.
John?
Sorry to have jumped in. Thank you.
No, it's my bad, always.
Yeah, 2 questions. So just so I don't have to keep asking, is all the contracts are up this year?
Correct.
Across the board, right?
Correct, yep.
All right, so that's going to be true for everyone, that's going to be added in from negotiated settlements once that's squared away. Okay, and the other one was, do we have any statistics on how our permits are looking this year versus previous years?
They're down right now since the beginning of the year, which is always the same every year. And then it starts picking up. We have, for January and February, let's see. I don't have the 24 on here, how much it's down. I don't have that with us.
Overall, we can say that.
Yeah.
Overall, we, every month, we compare year over year and to the trending, and we are trending in the wrong direction. So.
How much are we?
The number of permits are in a similar place, but dollar-wise, we just haven't had the big ones. Like, we've been lucky enough the last few years to have those big hitters like Blue Sky Drive and Mall Road and ones like that. So we're not talking about high seven figures or anything like that, but a significant number.
So the obvious question is, what's our anticipated new growth for the year?
So new growth, you may remember last year when we were here, we were talking about, we were lucky enough to have only captured a portion of one of the big buildings on Blue Sky Drive. So
Right.
we anticipate we're going to have another good new growth year next year because we're going to get the second half of that payment. But if you dig into the numbers from last year, the bulk of it was made up by that and then personal property, and expect the same, a similar amount of residential growth that we usually have, that big hit from Blue Sky Drive, and then the personal property growth. So we do expect to have another good year, but who knows about
Next year
beyond that.
is iffy. Got it. Thank you.
David?
On the contracted services, again, I'm assuming, when you say 5 weeks vacation for plumbing inspector and electrical inspector, is that just someone?
The subs, yep.
The sub?
Yep.
The work by the right for that period of time.
And it's to have the money just in case we do have to bring somebody in for either one of them for their entire vacation. We want to make sure we can pay that sub that comes in.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Roger?
Quick question. The cover sheet mentions, says added new local building inspector that was previously funded, but the position is vacant. But I think you just said it's unfunded in this budget.
So there was two different ones. So for a long time, the local building inspector, there was a position that had been funded and they would just the search was ongoing. So they had a couple of failed searches, but that position has been filled.
Okay.
Yeah.
This, pretty much this whole year. There is another one
Okay.
that since 6 years ago is unfunded.
All right, that makes sense. And then with the replacement of the retiring admin, did the step go down for that speculation of the?
Yep, that's been calculated.
Okay. It's just interesting that the salary line item went up, even though in many of the other budgets, it's almost level.
Yeah, so we knew that long-term clerical staff was retiring when we built last year's budget, so part of that savings was absorbed last year from
Okay.
budgeting for a replacement and not the long-term person. So
Okay.
some of that was already taken.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion to approve the building budget at $763,168. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Mike Hardy?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 1300. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for filling in, too. Hope he pays you a dinner or something. Public Works, you're up. Oh, it's time to spend some money.
Yeah, yeah.
Police was
Yes.
Yeah, but you got the second biggest budget.
Good evening. So I'll go through, start quick with just kind of the key points, I guess, and then if there's questions, anything specific. So no FTE increases. The increases that you see under salaries is mainly contractual and updating wage rates for some of the summer help. It was an old wage rate, so none of the hours changed. It's just updating wage rates for VA, summer help, those types of positions. So really the two bigger drivers of the budget increase, which otherwise we would have a pretty decent looking budget, is the water stabilization transfer. We have a pretty significant decrease from last year. So if you look at if you happen to calculate out the percent, we ended up purchasing about 3% less water this year from MWA than last year. However, we're transferring
from the Water Stabilization Fund, 20% less. So 3% less in purchase, 20% less in offset funds. So obviously, that's going to be a major driver. If it wasn't for, if we, so for instance, if we proportionally decrease the stabilization fund transfer 3% to match the 3% decrease in the water purchase, our operating budget is down to 3.14% increase. So that's a huge driver in this. I know back in, when the fund started, prior to me, John Sanchez, the discussion was, my understanding is that the stabilization fund was only going to be around for as long as kind of needed to stabilize expenses. And so in discussions with the finance team, it seems to be that we're going to start trying to phase out as we can that. The second largest driver, if you read the cover page, is the energy, the occupancy increase. So there's two components of the electric and the gas line items in the occupancy. For like the bills that you receive from Eversource and National Grid at your houses will pretty much only reflect what they call the delivery charges. And those are set by, those are reviewed by the Department of Public Utilities, the state, and they'll, agree to certain rate increases. I'm sure you've seen perhaps some emails or notices in those bills. The second portion of that charge, of the energy charge, is what is called supply cost. Those supply charges are typically for the large, the heavy energy users that we have. So it only, and those rates are negotiated. We put out an RFP with our energy consultant. They collect price proposals for several year contracts. We typically get about 3 different suppliers, and then they'll provide 24-month, 36-month, different time ranges, and then in review with our energy consultant, depending on all the world events and whatnot, we'll pick a year term that we believe is most beneficial. So our current contract for the electricity supply runs out in this November.
Yeah.
So starting December will be new rates after, I believe it was a three-year contract that we had. And then the gas is a separate contract for the supply. That expires, the new rates will start in April of '26. So unfortunately, the new rates are up pretty significantly. The electric supply is up 31% from the previous rates, and the gas will be up 47%. So pretty significant. I believe it was about 8 cents per kilowatt hour. The new rate will be 11.5 cents per kilowatt hour. For gas, it was $4.48 per therm, and it'll be $6.60 a therm with the new contract. So I guess the positive side to look at it is that we had a really beneficial contract in the previous couple of years, allowing us to keep our occupancy rates much lower than the market rates. Now that the contract's up, we unfortunately have to realize, the new price increases. So that is the second really large driver in our budget. There's a few other smaller items that will probably stick out. There's a new item for rust protection and undercoating, so we're experimenting with a thick, so one of the reasons why our fleet has to be surplus and the vehicles have to be replaced is that the frame rot really gets to the vehicles, resulting in failed inspection stickers, and they have to be taken off the road. So this undercoating, we're hoping will buy us, even at a year, because it'll be beneficial because the cost for this is about $1,000 for a new vehicle. So even if that gets us an extra year, I think overall keeping the fleet on for that will be worth it, but we'll see how that plays out. So on top of trying to extend the vehicle life, there's impending DEP regulation that mirrors California's Clean Air Act. And DEP issued emergency, I forget the specific terminology, but they used their authority to delay that regulation from setting in this year. It was looking like we would not be able to find any more diesel vehicles. So the law really targets, there's stricter diesel emission requirements, and then there's also a separate requirement on it to try to start phasing out combustible engines to zero-emission engines to 0% by 2035. So for our fleet, for 24 hours for snow operation, and for heavy-duty trucks, electric vehicles I don't think are where we need them to be to continue the services. And so we're not exactly sure which way the industry, assuming this regulation stays in effect and DEP doesn't reverse it, there's the EV I don't think is there, but they're also, and because of those factors that what we're hearing is the industry is maybe moving towards hydrogen. So we don't know which way to go. We don't know how to set up our facilities for fueling. So the undercoating and rust protection will hopefully extend the life of our diesel vehicles so that the industry all these issues get sorted out and we have a clear direction of kind of where we got to go and prepare for whatever fleet turnover results from that. And then I guess the last bigger thing that you'll notice perhaps is we are approximately doubling tree services. We have, I believe, 35, going from I think 35,000 to about 65. So 35,000 for every single tree that's in the town right away for a given year is for anyone that's hired a tree company, and you're paying non-prevailing union wage rates. That doesn't really get you far. That item's been pretty much level funded for quite a while. To just get a crane truck out for a day is somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 just for one day of a crane truck. I checked. I did a survey just to make sure that we weren't over increasing. I did survey several local municipalities to see what their budgets were, and they all pretty much had larger budgets and tree divisions to take care of it. So one of the other factors in this is that we've had a local tree contractor that's been willing to quote us per hour, and he's been working with us for forever. If that company, it's kind of like a one-man show. He's aging, and we're not sure how long he's going to stay in business for, and if when we have to change it out and hire one of the large tree companies, we think those prices are going to go really go up from what we've been paying. So I think those are the major items. If anyone wants to get into anything more specific.
Subcommittee.
Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support the budget. We've got votes for the other things too, but,
Can I add something?
oh, yes.
So Brian covered this, but I just want to hammer it home in terms of some numbers. The MWRA water, we're billed for that, and then we pay for part of that with the stabilization fund, and then the remainder of that basically comes out of the operating budget. And if you compare to last year, so last year, the part that came out of the operating budget was about $660K. This year, it's going to be $986K. So that's an extra $325K that's basically coming out of the budget, and that's part of the adder. The other one is the contracted, so that's under contracted services, you'll see that. And then, as he mentioned, the occupancy rates due to utilities have gone up 123K. So those two items alone account for a 4.8% increase in this budget. And that's out of the 6.1 in total. So basically it's 4.8% due to those two things that are pretty much out of your control. And then 1.3 for all the other stuff. Now, plus what the employee contracts are. So if you really want to drill down on what caused the big increase, those are two items.
It's the MWRA. Also, a little bit of this is an accounting trick, because a certain amount of money is pulled out of the water bills and piped into the water stabilization fund, and then later pumped back into the budget, and the rest of it comes through the rest of the general revenues of the town. So there's you pay for it one way or the other. Residents pay for it both ways, but some of it is through their property taxes and some is through the water budgets.
Yes.
And you can mix and match these by policy. You can change the rates in proportion of things by policy, and maybe we should do some of that. But there's bigger things afoot in terms of getting a better handle on the way that water is paid for and understood.
Yeah, so it's sort of a leading advertisement as to yet another reason why you want this to perhaps be an enterprise fund, or at a minimum be an accommodated account, because it really does skew the numbers quite a bit.
I'm going to ask, my memory is when we did the MWRA and we added that $10 to the bill, or $100, so I can't remember. 10%. But it was a set number.
It's been escalating.
Right, it was supposed to, it was built in, but it was mostly to pay the capital cost, and we were paying the cost of MWA water that we had to purchase because of the things we were switching over with capital. But is it now just being used partially to pay for just the cost because we're buying a lot of water from MWRA, or is it still more paying that extra money, paying the capital?
So it is going towards both. So kind of going, my understanding is that it started getting applied more towards the purchase because we were forced to start purchasing sooner because the PFAS regulations came out after.
Right.
And then DEP put a mandate on us to limit the amount of PFAS in the water, that we would use as much water as we could from MWRA and not use Vinebrook. And so because of that, so we started using water in not Vinebrook for a number of years sooner than we thought. So I guess fortunately we got a lot of grants and money on the capital side, and we could afford to then shift some of that proposed 7% increase over 10 years to supplement the purchase of water as well as the capital.
Okay.
I think the program was put in place before, while we were anticipating it.
Right.
And it was trying to sort of smooth out the cost of water over time. And now that we're actually connected, and I guess we can't connect it earlier, it sort of beat the curve.
Sure.
Beat expectations, higher than expectations. But it also hasn't been keeping up with the cost of water.
Right. Question? Frank?
So I think John and Roger are probably working on trying to figure out if we were to fully burden the cost of the water, regardless of whether it's coming from the stabilization or from operating money, what's it really cost and how to pay for it. I'm a little confused why we don't take more out of the stabilization to pay for the water now. Is the stabilization fund fully burdened? In other words, there's no money left over at the end of each calendar cycle? Or is it accumulating money?
It is accumulating. It was on a downtrend because of that increased upfront purchase. But it's, and then we can get, if you remember, last year, we proposed higher rate increase, so it was closer to 10% over the next 3 years versus what we thought was 7% would be sufficient because the revenues were down because COVID and office was closed. So we do have some extra, I mean, there is, I believe, per about 700,000 off the top of my head, somewhere short, just shy of $1 million in the stabilization.
So to me, it raises the obvious question, why don't we keep the tariff on the MWA water high enough that we can actually use the stabilization fund to pay for more of the water, period? But why don't we use it?
Don?
Because
I think the thinking Frank was that.
I know you're going to have a great answer.
I won't even say that.
No. But the point of it is, it's not just which pocket you take it out of, right? The stabilization money does not go against levy limits and things like that. The operating budget does. So there's a huge, penalty by not using other money that isn't in the operating budget.
Yeah. So I think the idea and why I don't just take it all was to sort of wean ourselves off of that subsidy from the stabilization account over time. So going from, I think it was like 1.9 million transfer last year, it's less than that this year, so there'll be like 700,000 left. So remember the timing of it, we don't collect all the money, and the reason we set up the stabilization fund was because we don't collect all the money the same time we incur the costs, and then we started incurring more costs by buying more water. So now we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're able to do the final phase of this project much sooner and for much less money than we originally had planned for.
Capital money.
Yes, so we're going to get to the time when we can we can pull the trigger and do away with the stabilization fund.
Not
because now-
require it for capital.
Yeah, we'll budget the correct amount in water revenues and budget the whole amount for the full cost of service for the water without having the stabilization to do. So if we did that all in 1 year, next year, if we took all of that money this year, next year when we went to do a transfer, we may only have 700,000 in there to transfer, and now we have a big increase in the.
But you're also lowering the water bills.
Well, no, the water bills are going up by the same rate over that 10 years. So the water bills aren't.
Wasn't there a surcharge to fund the MWRA costs?
Yeah, so there was a plan to increase the water bills a percentage a year over 10 years.
And is it going to stay at that higher rate, the water bills?
Yes, yeah, because that's what it's going to cost us to.
I see, okay. All right, I think I understand. I don't like it, but I understand.
But I'm not sure I do.
Well,
So just with respect to, so money is taken and put into this water stabilization fund based on the policy that was established in the water rates. If you somehow make a change instantly in 1 year and say, well, we're not going to take anything out of this, we're not going to put anything into the stabilization account, we're not going to take anything out of the stabilization account except residuals, then all that money is going to come out of the general fund, and the DPW, the water budget, is going to go relatively through the roof. It's going to look like it's huge. And we'll
So we could have a situation like that if we took all of the money out this year. So Frank's original question was, why leave any in? Why not maximize the amount you're taking out? And that's why, so next year, we can continue to wean ourselves off of that and not go from subsidizing the general fund with 1.5 or whatever it is, million from the stabilization to zero next year, if we didn't have.
Okay, so I guess the thing that I need to be getting used to is that the general fund funding of water is going to keep going up and up and up.
Yeah, until we get to that.
It's going to make the water budget look like it's out of control.
well,
Yeah, or we would do it in 1 year and then.
Well, I mean,
yeah, I'm less worried about the optics of what it looks like. What I'm trying to get at is, the fact that the operating budget will start to assume the fully burden of the cost of the water
Right.
right out of the operating budget. There's no stabilization transfer.
Correct.
Right.
At some point, once we.
Right.
In our mind, the time to do it was when we've fully borrowed that last.
Yeah.
Now we know what all the costs are.
Right, and so the capital's written down.
The expenses go to what they're supposed to be, the revenues
Okay.
get budgeted at what they're going to be, and then now you have, what's the new burden?
So, related to that, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it's not fair, but if I look at the water and sewer subsection 51? So that theoretically is all of the operating costs of water and sewer without the offset from stabilization.
Well, there's a
That is
line in-
net of the.
Net of it,
Yeah.
right, and so that's $5 million.
Yep.
Right? So as a coarse approximation, on an operating basis, we're using the operating budget to pay for about $5 to $6 million of water and sewer every year,
Yeah, plus that. So, yeah, it's more.
right?
Yep.
It's going to be more than that, but it's getting to the approximation level. So that's what you could pull out of the operating budget, roughly, with an enterprise fund, and it would escalate whatever the cost of chemicals or whatnot go up every year, which is probably going to escalate every year like 5% or something. But this has all the chemistry, it does not, it has the occupancy, so you get a pretty good picture
Yep.
of what would happen if you do that. And all I'm saying about the stabilization money is that $700K that's sitting there, I'm not advocating we just plummet this by $700K in one year and then jack it back up in the next. It doesn't do you much good. But I am making the point that that 10% increase is needed forever, and it's going to have to escalate, and it's coming out of the operating budget.
Yeah, I think when we're fully borrowed and we have an idea of what the new, what the full water cost us, or water and sewer cost us, then we'd be able to do a projection of the increase can stop at this point from that plan we had and then go to a more normalized increase. And what is that number? Is it more like a 5 to 6%?
And we're getting, you've thought about this, I'm sure. You're going to have to build a model to figure out what this is going to look like. So,
Yeah, I'm working on it with Mr. Eiler and Riggs, and
Yeah,
hopefully in the next week or two I
We
can.
sort of promised not to torment them too much until after the
yeah,
capital
so
items are done.
like I said, I didn't want to, but I think that the point's well made and hopefully well received. There is an opportunity here, and we can get this model together, and we don't even have to use it right away. We could just operate off the model and track what it's doing before we took it out of the operating budget and actually made it an enterprise fund.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, and then there's, to different degrees, once it's an enterprise fund, that doesn't mean you have to charge indirect cost to it right away.
So it's just been a pet project of mine in my head. I'm glad to see we're making progress, understanding a little better. At least we know we got $700K sitting there in the fund that we can drain down over the next maybe 3 years or something, right?
Yeah. So Frank, just one comment about your 5 million in the water and sewer page. That doesn't cover the cost of borrowing, which is in a separate line item.
Oh, I mean, when we finally figure this out, there's going to be, won't call them hidden costs, but there's a lot of fully burdened expenses that aren't reflected in just chemistry and
Yeah.
plumbing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to switch gears here. We're okay with that. The one I queued you up for, so as you described, the occupancy expenses, went up quite a bit due to the utilities and that was up 12% almost, but other facilities only went up, like 1% for police, fire, and library and so on. So I just wanted to understand, why that big difference between the two.
Sure, so if you notice, most of that increase is the really high users. So you'll see a $100,000 increase, 24% increase in electricity for the Mill Pond because that's the biggest user. So the supply rates are really going to target the really heavy users. It's not going to be flat across the board. As I said, supply doesn't actually get applied to all the accounts. Some of them only have the delivery charge to it. And then similarly, water and sewer, I guess the sewer pump stations, there's a $90,000 increase there. So I think for all the remaining buildings, it's only approximately 26,000 or so we have for an increase in those buildings. So overwhelmingly, you're seeing it really impact the really heavy users. Because I think it's also a complex formula that doesn't just, I could be wrong, but I believe it also factors in like peak month, like the spike that you might have, and so it's trying to separate out, and that's why you see it on the really heavy users.
So I think I'm hearing that it boils down to energy costs are a larger fraction of DPW budget than of other budgets is part of it, but you also said something I'm not sure I understand. You're saying that only the delivery costs hit other buildings and not the supply costs? Aren't they under the exact same supply and delivery pricing that DPW is?
So I don't know exactly, we can dig into it with Eversource and our supply consultant, but the supply, the supply and delivery are two separate charges, and if you look at your like Eversource bill or National Grid bill that you get at home, you're only going to see delivery, I believe.
We see both.
We see both.
We see both.
Yeah, okay. I think, I think mine, I only see delivery, but yeah, I mean, some of the accounts don't reflect supply, presumably because they're very low users.
Yes, some of the accounts will be having like zero usage, but still will have like a delivery fee on it.
Why would they have zero usage?
Like we just switched off, like for example, the sprinkler from the cemetery, we switched off from battery, so we're no longer using it, but like the meter is still there for backup. So we'll use like zero usage and still pay for delivery. But we can look into those.
Actually, let me just make sure I'm making a big assumption that I want to make sure is true. I assume that the town is under one
Bulk rate.
One big contract for electricity, and we're paying a certain amount per kilowatt hour for supply and a certain amount per kilowatt hour for delivery, right? And that's the same regardless of, if it's going to the police, fire, or library, or anywhere else.
I mean, it depends on the type of use. Like they'll have different designations, so some of them might be considered industrial use or at a different rate than, like, say, office or commercial.
So different parts of town may actually have different rates, you're saying?
I believe, like, our traffic lights, I think, don't have the same rate structure. The same way, like, if you look at your residential, it's going to say R1 on it, and there's a different set of rates for different types of use, so.
Oh, okay. So it's possible DPW might have a different rate than the library, just as an example, or?
Yeah. I mean, we can verify, but
can verify.
it's like the treatment plant and sewer stations could very well be on a different, like an industrial.
Okay, so it's all negotiated town-wide, but there's different rates depending on how we use it.
Sometimes they're not exactly the same, but like I have to go look item by item to see, but like we have hundreds of accounts, so I'll go back, verify, and let you guys know.
Okay, all right, that's starting to make more sense. Thanks.
It's not peanut butter.
Yeah,
Actually,
apparently not.
Frank?
can't we just negotiate a bulk rate for the municipality for everything we use? I don't think we're worried about which spreadsheet that many BTUs went to versus another spreadsheet. What we're trying to do is lower our municipal energy costs by negotiating good rates as bulk rates with the best supply we can get. And I thought we negotiated what the rates were going to be as a municipality, and that's what got us the best, and we did. I thought it was a 5-year deal the last time, but maybe it was 3, and that's how we get better pricing.
The supply, yes. Yeah, like I said, the delivery is set by the Department of Public Utilities. Eversource, National Grid, whoever here it would be National Grid.
All right.
They work directly with the state, and they share, I'm sure they sit in similar meetings. The electric company will propose, show their cost, the state will okay it, and then.
I don't think we're going to figure out how the delivery fees are done for each aspect of the town. I would have thought something's crazy here.
I don't think it's flat, and I don't think it's a fixed percentage per use either. I think there's a lot more complexity in the delivery charge.
Okay, I give up.
I could share some bills.
No, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't think we need to do that. It different rates explains a lot of this.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, just sorry to keep on going on this, but I guess I'm still confused because like the schools, they have no increase, level funded for both gas. Actually, electricity might be up 1% or something minor. So I'm just having a tough time understanding why they would have no increase and you're experiencing, these huge increases. I don't know if, John, whether you have any input into that, but.
I didn't get it. I was looking for the.
Oh, so the schools, they basically, in their budget, it's basically level funded for utilities. And when I question them on
I don't know
that-
how much of their budget they spent to date, did they have a surplus this year that they just don't need to increase it by more because there was enough of a surplus?
Yeah, I don't know that either. Okay, so what you're saying is they could have built in, if there's a surplus from this year, then. that-
Yeah, I mean, they could have said with their average usage is, this is what they expect to use, that's going to land at $1 million.
We'll cover
$1 million.
the increase.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe, yeah, I don't know, I didn't get into
Yeah,
that
I
detail.
mean, that's like library and police only had to go up by 1% because
Because of that. Okay,
I
that
feel
makes,
like we're
that
going to
makes
make it
sense.
based on the bills we have.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else?
Move to approve?
I wanted to say one, I would just say on, and maybe better to talk about it when we talk about vehicle replacement, but you brought it up, the rust inhibition. We also thought that we would start, we added some, a decent amount of money when we built the maintenance building, the rec maintenance, DPW rec maintenance for the wash station. Is that used regularly? I mean, at the time, it was like, we're going to have a schedule and every vehicle is going to be washed on a set schedule. Are we keeping up with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, our fleet maintenance, when they can tell, so it's typically weekly that they're in
Okay.
there. I just, that's only going to go so far. You can wash it as.
Sure, but it was a component, and I just
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
make sure we're, that it's not something that just sits there, because that was a component. Deb?
I do have a question. On the summary page, the sludge removal, there's an increase, it looks like, of like $20,000 from 130K to 150. And I know this was only through January, but we hadn't spent anything. Is that a timing item, that we typically don't spend that till closer to the end of the fiscal year? And what's driving the 23 increase there?
Yeah, there's large, it happens maybe twice a year. So we have large storage bays, sludge lagoons at Mill Pond. So it goes from the sludge holding tank, all the sediment, sludge, that gets pumped up to the sludge lagoons, and it's such a fine mud that it really has to dry out, and so they sit in the beds for a while, dry out. And then there's a certain mixing process, so it's pretty lengthy. It doesn't happen, I mean, the sludge doesn't just fill up all in once. It's a slow process over the course of months and months. The increase is that it has to be brought to a landfill, so it gets mixed at a 4 or 5 to 1 ratio with, cleaner dirt. That's the permit that we have with DEP. and then we haul that off to a landfill. The landfill we had been using the last year or the year before. I think in the last year, the landfill finally closed down. So the new landfill is more expensive. And then one of the notes I think I have in the cover sheet was that on the horizon, I don't know where the costs are going to go with that, because there's discussion of regulating PFAS and waste. So MWRA, if they start regulating Deer Island for the sewer waste and sewer discharge, that cost to treat is going to be reflected in our sewer assessment. Similarly, Mill Pond has PFAS in it, so the sludge that gets pumped up is going to have PFAS components in the sludge. And if they start regulating landfills for PFAS disposal, that price could also go up.
Sorry I asked.
The disposal tonnage rate increased from 65 to 90-ish. So, yeah, that's
ton.
one of, yeah, per ton. That's one of the reasons.
Mill Pond. Frank's not even paying attention.
No, I'm
Chris.
good. I love Mill Pond.
So on the highway budget, with snow and ice and removal, I was going to ask, looking at our budget last year, hey, what did we do with the extra money? But I saw we went over again. And so thinking that on fiscal year '22, we were at 710, fiscal year '23, we were at 537, we were at 443 last year. Do you think it's time that we up it from $350,000 to something a little bit more in line with what we're paying?
John?
No, nice.
John,
Special.
I know it's special, and I'm going to ask about it.
So this is, former town accountant loves talking about this. So this is one of the little nuances in Massachusetts state law, that if we were to up that, so we're allowed to raise on the tax rate any deficit incurred in snow and ice. So there's towns around here much bigger than us that budget actually lower than us. And the directive from the DLS, Division of Local Services, back before I started doing this more than 20 years ago, was instruct your people not to increase it, because if we say we added 400,000 to it, and then we had 5 years in a row where we spent less than that, if we reduce our budget, we no longer can raise it on our tax rate the following year. So any deficit would have to be made up that year through transfers. So probably not a huge deal, but if you ever had a blizzard year, like, I forget, was it?
2015.
Yeah, when we had all 40 days straight of snow. If you were in that predicament that year, you would have millions of dollars you would have to come up with that year. So it's a little bit of a nuance. The state law allows it, and best practice is not to increase it. Could we increase it $100,000 and probably not have to worry about it? Yes.
Yep.
But
And I guess my thing would be, going back 10 years, what is our average, considering like last year was a light year and we still went over it. I remember we had some some nuisance storms, but, just so that we're somewhat in line. I mean, that makes sense. And then on the same budget, we removed $10,000 for emergency response planning.
Yeah, that's an update, so that has to be done by DEP regulation, updated once every 5 years. And then there's a risk and resiliency assessment plan, which is a separate document that you'll actually see on the capital outlay for an update this year. So that's just a frequent rotating every 5 year that gets updated with the latest information.
Okay. On central fleet maintenance, I noticed that the gasoline amount that we're going is increased from, we had 26,500 last budget to 27, but it's the same price. I'm guessing gasoline price per gallon went down, but in the last budget, we actually wrote that it was 408 per gallon. So I'm just wondering what we're being charged per gallon and if that actually changed or not.
So the way we calculate, I can't remember off the top of my head what the cost is, but kind of how, since we can't predict where it goes, we use, what's the website?
Oh, the CPI.
It's not the CP. There's an index that I believe the federal government lists, and so we basically average the last year's worth of fuel from that and just apply it to the gallons. And hope that it's enough. Some years it might not be enough, but we can't predict which way gas, and if I could, I wouldn't be here.
Well, yeah, I only asked because last time I, specifically brought it up because like 408 a gallon where we were at. And so I just want to make sure that those calculations, if we're going up by 500 gallons, if it's going to make sense budget-wise.
Anybody else?
One more.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yep.
On the accommodated accounts, the trash section,
Let's come back.
We'll come, yeah, that's a next line.
sorry.
No,
We have
that's
to
all
vote
right.
those separately, so
Anything else? Anybody on this? Oh, Chris.
Cut me off. I was having fun here. I think it's in cemeteries. Yes, there's a TBD for 20,000, and there was a TBD in last year's as well for 20,000. It's on the main, under salaries, under part-time. There's then part-time and then TBD.
Yep. That's just historically been in. I mean, historically, it's been used for overtime. We looked at it this year, wondering why it's still named that. So next year, we'll just move that to the overtime where it's been being used.
Okay. And then I noticed that perpetual care has gone up quite significantly and will in the next 3 years. Can you just speak to the hourly rate increase? Because I think it was at 12 something and now we're at 16, 17, and 17?
Yeah, so that is what, if we were to, so the VA, if we do get somebody, I think we only had one person last year that helped us out, but the VA has an agreement that we signed that they set the rates for the VA. And that's just something that we hadn't, there was a period of time where we couldn't get VA assistance, so I think that's why the rate kind of just was never updated. They didn't have, for a while, years and years ago, every year would get less and less assistance. They wouldn't have people, and then it just kind of fell off. And more recently, they reached out. I think it's a Burlington resident that's in charge of the program, so that they're looking to get it back, and we were able to use somebody this last year. And we're just, knowing what the contract rates are, we just figured we'd update it to what they are.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Anyone else? We're good on this one. A motion?
vote to approve
So,
DPW operating budgets.
a second?
Second.
For $11,989,856. All right. So let's switch over Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chris Campbell.
Yes.
Mike Hardy.
Yep.
John Eiler.
Yes.
Deb McCarthy.
Yes.
Frank Monaco.
Yes?
Steve Moran. Steve Moran.
Yes,
Sorry about that.
that's all right.
Rob Neufeld.
Yes.
Ed Parsons.
Yes.
Rick Rasso.
Yes.
Roger Riggs.
Yes,
David Tate.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. 13-0-0. All right, so trash removal. Next.
Yep, so just a quick update on that. We entered year 2. This will be the prices for a second year of the 5-year contract we signed. The increase is CPI driven, so it's contractually already in there, and these are the contractual increase cost. No increase in the level of service, tonnage, all staying the same. It's just the cost per ton.
And subcommittee?
subcommittee voted 2-0 in favor.
Questions? Deb?
Is not,
Yeah, for the trash removal, yeah.
so there's a $252,000 recycling processing fee, so that's not included in the first line that says solid waste and single stream recycling?
Correct. So the first item, and we'll update this because the numbers there also, there's some numbers. The 6,500 is the tonnage total, which is not clear. So we'll make some of these updates so that it's a little more clear next year. So the first line item is the actual collection.
Yep.
The second item is the tipping fee. That's the disposal of the collected trash. The recycling processing is a pass-through cost. So the trash haulers in the disposal sites don't have their own recycling processing. So they bring it to basically a subcontractor. They pass on the cost to us. So basically, the recycling processing is disposal of recycling, tipping fees is disposal of trash. The first item is the actual collection with the trucks.
Got it. Thank you.
And the second number, by just FYI, the 6,500 is those two numbers, 6,500, 2,400 that you see in those line, the second and third line of the tonnage. The next number is the cost per ton.
Other questions? Motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve the trash removal budget for $3,423,041. All those in favor? Oh, no, let's see, Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Mike Hardy?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes?
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Russo?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
And David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 1300. Next is streetlights.
Yep, so no increase. The streetlights covers both the maintenance of streetlights as well as traffic lights. The amount of money we spend year to year has been pretty flat, so we're able to make level funded.
Any questions about streetlights? Deb?
Does that include the flashing walk signs?
It includes the maintenance of the existing installations. We were able to start replacing some of the old ones that Sears, we have 3 that are kind of old and wouldn't comply with kind of current standards. One's Francis Wyman at Cedar Street. When we did the sidewalk project, we upgraded that, took out the overhead one, and now have what you commonly see is those flashing signs on the side. And so we have one there, one at Wynn and Sears, and one at Wynn and Harriet. And Wynn and Harriet should be on the schedule to be replaced when we install the Mountain Road traffic light.
The only reason I ask is because there's one down by the Mercedes dealership
Yep.
that's been constantly flashing for about 3 weeks now.
I was guessing that's where, yeah. So I like to always remind the meeting that Cambridge Street is owned by DOT. So we reached out to them. I haven't heard back from them on what the issue
I'll
is.
call them.
It might be, sometimes when it's at the request of a commercial developer, they have a separate agreement where the developer's responsible for maintenance, so.
Unless somebody wedged something in the button, it really shouldn't be blinking that bright all the time. You're right.
Who's paying for the electricity?
The state.
Not us.
Maybe.
Perhaps Mercedes, perhaps the state.
Moving on.
So the streetlights, I remember, I've now been here long enough that I remember stuff that not everybody. When we switched to the LED streetlights, they were supposed to last 10 years. We bonded them. It kind of paid for itself because of the savings in electricity, is my memory. But those are going to start wearing out. Is that true? Are we seeing that? Is it kind of a constant? Are they all going to go out at close to the same time, and we're going to see a big bonded number that we need to have in the capital?
Yeah, we actually, I think I think you'll see in a few years out, it should be on the capital plan to start.
Is it in there?
To start doing.
Oh, good,
Yeah,
okay.
I think it's a 2-year, 3-year. We're trying to space it out so it's not all at once. But, yeah, we're starting to see some more failures. And before the town goes dark with.
Right. They're all going to go out the same week.
Are those failures in bulbs or fixtures or combination?
Mostly the bulbs. There was a warranty issue of a certain wattage bulb that I think 65 watts, that was an issue. We got replaced under warranty, but it's typically the bulbs. Sometimes it's the photocell on it, and that goes and it won't come on when it gets dark.
That must be 65 real watts, not 65 incandescent watts, because a 65-watt bulb, 30 feet up is going to do diddly squat for the road. Okay.
It's mirrors. Reflection.
Move to approve?
Second.
Let's go to Cheyenne. Cheyenne?
Yes. Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Mike Hardy?
Yes.
John Adler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Newfeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rassa?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David T.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 13-0-0. All right, drinking water assessment. This is a quickie.
Yes, so this has been in there forever. It's a way that DEP gets funding to be able to operate and regulate everyone. It's based on the water that's consumed, so regardless of where the source comes from, whether it's MWA, Vine Brook, or Mill Pond, it's an assessment to every public water supply. And that should be roughly, $9.50 per million gallons used, so it's always there.
Always there. Any questions?
Move to approve?
Second.
Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Mike Hardy?
Yes.
John Adler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Newfeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 13-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Board of Appeals is up next.
I think I can stand in for the Board of Appeals. They don't have any staff members, and it's a
Oh, right.
volunteer board, so it's typically one of us that does it, and no increase, no requested increase to the budget. It's kind of hard to nail down the number that they need for that job, because it depends on what's going for variances over a specific amount of time. So a few years back, they were spending more than what's in there now, but the last couple of years, they haven't used it all. It's basically we have recording clerks for all of the departments, and those are in that, the budget that we share called the legislative. The reason this one's on its own is because it has a lot more needs than just recording clerk. It's sort of like a mini administrative assistant position, sort of. Does more things like mailings and putting together packages for the meetings and things like that. So again, no increase. There's technically no staff, but there is a little bit of administrative support by a part-time recording clerk. Recording clerk plus, we'll call it.
And subcommittee. Who hears that?
Yes, subcommittee voted 2-0 in favor.
Any questions? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is more of a general question. I don't want to give anyone ideas with this, but I noticed there's no stipends for the elected board here, but a lot of our other elected boards do have various stipends. The general question is, where did these stipends come from? Because there's nothing in the bylaws about it or anything. Who authorized these amounts? And
I think only elected boards get stipends. Appointed, I don't think there's any appointed board.
Oh, this is an appointed board?
Yep.
All right, but I'll ask the question anyway. So even though it has nothing to do with
I'd have to
this,
look
I
into it.
apologize.
It certainly predates me, but I could look into it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because it's not in the bylaws, so I'm just curious.
And not all elected boards.
Amy will know. I'll ask her in the morning.
Okay, thank you.
Quick.
And, but along those lines, I guess, mileage, we see that on a lot of these groups. Do they do site visits? Do they
do.
Do they get
Yep.
reimbursed for mileage, or?
They can. Not everybody puts in for it.
But they don't put in for it?
Yeah, and it could be sporadic. Sometimes people do, or someone finds out someone else did, so they put in for it, but most people don't.
They don't get an even distribution?
No.
You know. Motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve $13,731 for the Board of Appeals. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Mike Hardy?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy? Deb?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 1300. Thanks.
So before the tech guys get going on their presentation, we had some conversations before the meeting, so I just wanted to confirm a couple things that we had talked about. I did confirm, yes, we could go to executive session, not today because it wasn't on the, but this item does qualify, but only to discuss those privileged things like the types of equipment and where, not to vote on the budget at all, but only for that piece we could, which I think was what someone had recommended.
Right.
And then just before they get started, I think some of the initial reactions certainly that I've received from folks talking about this project was how did you go from what used to be 2 million over 5 years to 4 million over 5 years? And those guys will get into it when they do their presentation, but kind of the back of the envelope or the elevator pitch that we've been talking about is that 2 million over 5 years has probably escalated somewhere around 25%. That's, a quarter of it right there. There's an item in here for 24/7 monitoring for the system. That's another 500 plus. There's some data centers in there, and these guys will talk about that. That's 300 plus. There's some virtualizations that wasn't in the last one. That's 100,000. And then the last piece is a full replacement of the phone system. Again, these guys will get into the details, but we normally would only be doing half of that. So that's another, say, almost 500,000. So that's sort of the quick way we got from what we used to spend 2 million to what we spend, what we're asking to spend 4 million now. And the next two questions are likely going to be, you're only asking in the operating budget for 700,000 for 5 years. That's only 3.5 million. Why are you telling me 4 million? That's because there's going to be two funding requests for this. One, the operating budget that we're going to ask for a not to exceed 700,000 because we're still and will continue to still nail down the total costs of all of these items before we pull the trigger, and we know that it's going to be, or we feel comfortable that it's going to be less than what we're asking for. And the second piece of funding, anybody that watched the school committee meeting last night would have seen, they're also requesting to fund about $600,000 of this project through a free cash warrant article. And the reason being is because those products, because they're going to be only in a school and billed directly to the school, will be eligible for what's called E-rate reimbursement. So we could potentially get up to $250,000 or it's $270,000 back for purchasing those, and then that would just close back to free cash. So that's sort of the two questions I got from folks as I was talking about it was, why are you talking about two different numbers, and how did you get from one number to the other? And these guys have a presentation to go over with you, and I'll...
Before you jump into that, how much did we pay for the phone system that we have now, and how long ago was that?
So the last refresh, we did about half of the phone system, and it was about half of the price.
Okay.
Not exactly. Joe has the exact if we need it, but that's in high level, that's about what it was.
So just for the committee, before they do their presentation, there were questions about kind of some of the products that we don't get much background on, and it's because of some of the security issues. And so I had asked John, do we have the capability of going into an executive session so that they could answer those questions and go into a little more detail? And so that's why he just answered. He had reached out to town council. And so we have a couple of options. And in the meantime, we talked about another solution. ISACS is having a meeting with an executive session next Tuesday night.
Correct.
And so regardless, we ask them to go ahead and give their presentation and let people ask the questions. And if there are things they can't answer, we have a couple of options. One is they've invited, they don't want the whole group, but if you have detailed questions and some background, we would say go to the executive session of their meeting next Tuesday. Or, now that we know, if you're more comfortable, we could put it on the Wednesday meeting. Regardless of which way we do it, we probably won't vote this number until next Wednesday night's meeting.
That's fine. I just wanted to point out, we jumped into this without any kind of intro as to what are we talking about.
I understand, but we also, we jumped into it talking about the potential of, yes, you can do an executive. I want people to understand as they look at this that we have some options for getting more answers now as we get their presentation.
Okay, just don't forget to say, what is this?
Sure.
Because so far, we're using pronouns, and nobody has ever said the MIS 5-year contract to replace the system.
I think that's what we're just about to get to.
No, we're going to get the detail. Sorry, I'm making
That was me.
an unnecessary point.
I didn't wait to be called on, I just started talking. And if I can add one more thing, without being called on again, the presentation that they're going to go over, for those of you using the website, that's on there. It's under other accounts because that's where it's actually funded in the operating budget. So if you go down to other accounts, it says capital, I think it says technology infrastructure refresh, which is a much better name than capital improvements.
We just want to confirm, do you guys want us to go over the large one that you have access to? Because we also have a shorter truncated version. They kind of align, but I guess you probably want us to go over the
I
full.
would go with the big one.
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to confirm.
The big one?
Good try, though.
I know some people glaze over, so. We have no objection.
Right?
While they're getting this up,
Same thing.
I did have one comment, though. I think just if a couple of folks are planning to go to the ISAC committee meeting tomorrow, or next Tuesday, it might be better just to have it here so everyone gets a consistent representation of what this project is about, rather than having it kind of come secondhand through the folks who did attend.
We'll make that decision after.
No, after,
see what
yeah.
kind of questions people.
But that was just, while they were getting it up, I thought I'd bring that up.
All right, so first of all, thanks for having us once more. We kind of know that the number is larger than it was before, and we're going to be trying our best to explain why that is happening. So let's start with the first thing, the first page. So we are planning to replace what is called the core network in the schools. And I will get in detail later on what John was mentioning before about day rate, because this component is not covered for what we're going to be submitting on day rate. And simply because the rules of day rate are a little complicated, they don't allow redundancy, for example. So you cannot get things like a network switch with two network supplies because they consider that redundant. So we didn't want to risk what we submitting to E-rate, but submitting components that we need to be, if you want to put it that way, redundant. But we did just submit in another component. So the core network upgrade is just for the schools, and I know that people are not asking me what that is, but basically, the way I see it, this is like the octopus that sits on the schools, joining or connecting all the other schools. There are 6 schools, as you know, and every school has a network internally, but yet they have to connect to high school in order to go to the internet. So this is what we call like the most important component of the network, if you want to put it that way, on the schools. This project, or this component is totalizing for $137,826.58.
And Jose, just to make a point, last round, we did the town core, which was a little bit bigger, because everything goes through the town, including the 4 schools. So 4 schools will traverse the town network to go out, and that was more like $400,000 or $500,000 last round. We don't have to do it this time, because that's one of the biggest pieces of the last refresh. So we don't have to touch the town this time around. But the school, they held off because they had a newer piece of equipment in their core, and it literally goes out of support in June or something.
What I want to say there, yeah, there are 2 components that kind of forces us to make the decision when we need to replace. One is called the end of life, and the other one is the end of support. The end of life is when the manufacturer says, okay, here is the switch, or whatever component, and this is the last time that I'm making that model. The end of support is the software that they provide on that will, continue supporting us for the next 5 years, for example. Should I continue, or do you have any questions on this?
Press on.
Yeah, keep going.
All right, thank you. The edge network upgrade, and this is in the town. The total over here is for $263,717.60. And again, this is the network internal on every of the 17 entities that we have in the municipality, that they collect data from different devices, IoTs and computers and so on, and they join together, to then go to the existing core.
To make a point, on the town, there's actually 45 edge switches.
Correct.
We say 17 because there's 17 buildings, but then we also have some hardened switches or some rugged switches that are going to be going out at those locations where there are boxes and they're connecting the water and sewer data. So you may see those boxes on the side of the road. There's about 21 of those, and then there's another 5 that are like Terrace Hall and places like that, the pumping station, Vinebrook's going away, Mill Pond. So there's also, so when I say the 17 buildings, I'm more talking the town hall, the annex, those buildings. But then there are multiple other locations as well. So on the town side, there's a total of 45 edge switches.
Something else to be said there too, some of those facilities or little rooms, if you want to put it that way, don't have ventilation. Therefore, the type of the switch that we put over there is called rugged or rag. Those, they resist high and low, very low temperatures. The normal ones will kind of break easily.
And that's another big add-on. That's the reason why I'm mentioning that, is we've never replaced those in the time I've been here. So we've kind of allowed old switches are out there, and we replace them with other old switches because we're not overly concerned about, because they only have 4 or 5 ports on them. But you go and you open one of them boxes and they're really hot, so they do fail all the time. And again, we had a stack of a lot of old switches, and the way we addressed it was just rolling those switches in and out. But I think it's time now that we put decent rugged switches in there, up-to-date software, update everything on those.
Any questions here?
No.
So next is the combined wireless, and this is covering for the police department, for the public library, for the schools, and for the town. I think that this involves replacing in this part of the plan for 440 wireless access points. The total over here is for $450,389.26.
If I...
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this seems like a good time to ask this general question. So we have a lot of building projects, as you know. So in particular, for sure, we're doing a new police station in Fox Hill, and there's some reasonable possibility we'll do the high school also. So the question is any of this work going to be done in the current building? Because obviously, we don't want to do all this work and then, have a new building a year later that you have to redo it all.
Want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we definitely took that into consideration, but the timeframes, a lot of these things are going end of support in July, right? So none of those buildings are going to be built in July. So we have the option of, we can't even extend the contracts on them. So the sport contract and the SmartNet contracts can't be extended because they're end of life, like Jose said from the beginning. So it doesn't really make sense for us not to do those. And then we can move them into the new buildings. We have every intention of moving anything that's new into the new police station. So again, if it's a server.
Well, I mean, the police station in particular are moving in September, I think, so it would be a little silly to do it for 3 months, right?
What do you mean? The new building's going to be done by September?
No, they're moving out of the old building of
Yeah.
Vine Brook, though.
Yeah, so we'll move the equipment that they have down there. That's the intention.
Okay.
So we won't be, but then, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I guess that's the general question, is any equipment that we do put into, say, the old Fox Hill, are we going to be able to at least move that to the new one and not have it be too ridiculously expensive doing it a second time, or?
Yes, thanks. As you see, the project is for the next 5 years. So to respond to your question, yes, those products are good for the next 5 years, starting on fiscal year 2026.
So is the budget for moving all this stuff into new buildings included in here, or is that supposed to be included in the building project budget?
The moving is not included.
The moving isn't correct. The moving isn't, no.
Isn't?
No,
So-
we're not going to buy new equipment.
So do the building committees know that they need to include that in their budget, or?
I can just speak to
He's got the answer.
Just to the police station project, we didn't build in for equipment, but did build in that we would have to absorb some sort of moving both to the temp space and then back from the temp space to the new space.
That would include this equipment, presumably. And do you know that Fox Hills include that kind of?
I don't know about that.
That kind of,
So I don't know that there's a particular line item, but the designers would include everything to make the school operational to begin with.
So
So
isn't the bigger issue cabling and wiring and that sort of thing? It's not
Yeah, I know.
the boxes, right?
That's why I'm,
Yeah. I mean, stuff that's in walls and pulled fiber and that sort of thing, that's a nightmare.
yes, it is.
anyway, there's probably a fine-
We're replacing existing
okay.
equipment. That part's been done.
I just wanted to make sure it was out there.
But the building committees would be putting in new networking in the new building, so they could just plug in the
Yeah.
old stuff into the new building.
well, the new buildings are completely different configurations and larger, and
To your point, John, though, it does make a lot of sense. If we start getting this equipment, if we start receiving this equipment in July and August, we're not going to put it in the old police station.
Okay.
We'll just start outfitting Vine Brook.
Excellent.
And then when the new building's in, we'll move it to there. Or we'll hire somebody to move it in there. All right.
So I
Mike.
got a question. I don't remember anything of this scale before, so the way it seems to me is all of a sudden, we have a bunch of equipment that's going end of life, end of service. I mean, is basically that the case? We have a bulk of equipment from various vendors doing various things, and it's all going end of life around the same time?
I would say this is one of the largest groups, but we are adding more equipment on, right? And it's not all. So, for instance, John brings up a good point. Since this, we've had a new fire department go in. We've had a new, 2 new DPW buildings, and I think we've bought some other switches at some of the schools. So, for instance, I don't want to get into the model numbers, but then, let's just call it the 9 Series, right? So the 9 Series is the new ones. All we have to do is bump up the service contract on it and the SmartNet contract on those 9s. So we probably have a dozen of those switches out of, say, the 100 that we're putting in. So it's not every single piece. But a lot of these are subscriptions as well. So, and we did 5-year subscriptions last time. And this is, in the time I've been here, 11 years, this is the 3rd refresh we've done.
Third refresh. So that was kind of leading to my next question. For the new equipment that we're going to be putting in, what's the expected life of that, 5 years?
Everything we build is in 5 years. So this is continuous, you expect us back here in 5?
Is that like industry standard, like you buy this stuff from vendors and they say this has got a 5-year life cycle?
Well, in fairness, again, we're talking about a lot of different products. So on the telephones, some of these telephones are from 2 times ago. So
10 years
they
ago,
lasted
right.
10 years. So last time, we didn't have to refresh. I'm sorry, all the phones, maybe half of them.
Okay.
So
Just depends.
it depends on where
What
we
the
are
piece
in
of
the cycle.
equipment is and what the life cycle is.
Exactly
Correct.
where we are in the cycle. But I believe it was the idea of the schools in the town to do these 5 years so we don't find ourselves 15 years behind in technology. So we're always refreshing, and this is just another one of those cycles. And I believe the first one was 1.8 million when I was here 10 years ago. It was 2 million last time, and this one total is 4.1. And again, we know that's a big chunk, and that's why we're here to explain that.
Yeah, and I think earlier we mentioned, for example, with the core, that we intending to replace the core in the schools at this time. And because the last cycle we did the town, and the equipment over there is still good. All we just need is to renew subscriptions for the next 5 years. So in 5 years, when I retire, right?
Yeah, sure.
Probably the question is, I guess the request is going to be for the town and not for the schools. So to answer your question, I guess this equipment, generally speaking, lasts like close to 10 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Moving on.
Thank you. So the total over there was $450,389.26. Gotta be precise.
We did 26 cents.
Right. The core switch monitoring, do you want to speak about this, or?
We can't get into the specifics, but again, this time we're splitting the edge up from the core. Again, we're not going to get into the specific products, but we used to always have the same product for both. So a majority of the edge is not going to be included in this. That number figure would be much bigger if you were monitoring all 125 switches, where we're only going to be monitoring the edge. So that's the only comment I would make on this, is that that's actually a small figure, and it's because it's only monitoring a small group of switches.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the total over there is $22,159.96.
So fair to assume that monitoring implies something to do with security?
No, that's more if there is something wrong in the core. So say, for instance, somebody creates a loop back or something like that. Somebody plugs something and the network starts going, yeah, you start getting some feedback. It will report back to us that there's something going on this port.
A jabber, maybe.
And resolves more things like latency and so on the network. So things don't look slow in one side and fast in the other. Good?
Everybody, we're moving on? Move on. Move along.
Then we have the security enterprise agreement, and this covers quite a few things over here, like the breach protection that Joe probably is going to be talking a little more about. Applications on firewalls, DNS filtering, email filtering protection, security policy management, MFA, which is the multi-factor authentication, and other security essentials.
Do you want to go to the next page where it's got it broken out?
Yes.
Okay. Is it broken out there? Yes.
Right. So the.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
you
go ahead with the first one.
So the breach protection is that's the big add-on. So that's the one called the SOC. There's the SOC and the endpoint protection. I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe this. So even if we skip the SOC, we still need endpoint protection. The endpoint protection is like the typical endpoint protection you guys have on all your computers. They call it EDR now. It's just an endpoint protection. It does north and south traffic, if you will. So that's basically the internet is coming to your computer and going back out. If his computer's here, my computer's here, it's only taken between us and the internet. But if something goes on from what they call east to west, it's not doing anything to protect that. So your endpoint protection usually only protects again, that's considered north to south versus east to west. So then you go up to the next level, and that's how these folks get you, is something called NDR, which is network protection, which is that east to west. And then there's the MDR, which is managed, which is someone else monitoring as well as us. And then there's XDR, which is the whole ball of wax. And that's what we're proposing here. So that whole SOC plus the XDR, which again is monitoring the whole machine, north to south, east to west, they're monitoring it 24/7. That's that huge number of 689. If you decided, I don't know if we need that 24/7 monitoring, you guys can do it, don't worry about it, back it out. We could only back out 520 of that, because we still have to put that low-level endpoint protection on, and that's $169,000, just so that that figure kind of comes into focus a little bit better. So again, you could say we don't need the SOC. Okay, it doesn't get rid of 689, it gets rid of 520. And then the next line, the 391, is all the other products. So if you want to go back up again, I'm sorry, Jose, can we go back, just so I can describe that maybe a little bit better as well? Let's go page up, maybe. Yeah, so the breach protection, that's that one, right? And then all the other, the firewalls, the DNS filtering, the email filtering protection, the security policy, the MFA, that's that other group of 391 was the number. So that's the 391. So you can see how big the breach protection cost is. So, do you guys have any questions on that?
Keep going, we'll come back to it.
Okay, great.
We won't be shy about jumping in, just keep
Yeah, no, go right ahead.
There are too many techie people here to not ask questions.
Yeah,
But
and we love those conversations.
Now we're touching the phone system WebEx calling solution. You can talk about that, and
No, I'm
I'm
going to
sure.
let you talk about the WebEx calling solution.
Correct. So, this is 2 pages too, I believe. There are, one of the things that we want to do is replace the existing system, and I guess most products are trying to go to the cloud right now. We are on premises, so that's one of the things that we're trying to do, moving to the cloud. There is this, the introduction of the silent panic button. And basically, I just brought a telephone, and I'm just going to show it. See the red
And while Jose is passing that around,
Don't touch it.
you can touch it. That's a freebie.
That's a $4.1 million
Spending
phone.
that much money.
Right,
You guys can
so-
throw it across the...
What happens is, I think there is going to be something being discussed in the government here in Massachusetts. I think it's called the Alicia's law, that is going to require all the schools to have some way of two-way communication, silent panic button. So what happens is, for what you see over there, in the event of something happening in a classroom, the teacher, for example, goes right in the back of that phone, presses a button, and that will open a direct line with the local authorities over here, police in this case. So they would be able to listen to the whole conversation happening in that room, and they're going to act accordingly. If it is something probably between a student and a teacher, probably they have to call the main office then and say, listen, there is something happening there, could you go and see? But if it is something, major, there will be a quick response to the facility and probably avoid, catastrophes and stuff like that. So I guess that is one of the main features that we have over here with the new phones. And that, of course, requires a new system. I think I have the total over here on the next page. Yeah, the total is $907,186,000, and it is not just phones. And I'm saying that because there are a lot of other components involved in that, like voice gateways that we have to have one in every school in case if the system goes down, there is still one line that goes over the wire. an app communicates to 911, for example. Internally, we don't call the next person using the 7 number. No, we just dial the last 4 extension numbers and so on. And we've been using this for what?
11 years now, so, yeah,
Well,
again, 10 years.
correct.
10 years, so
At
this is the third refresh. Yep. And as we've refreshed over time, to the point that was brought up earlier about what phones can come and what phones can go, we've only replaced a couple hundred phones, so we have 1,000 phones throughout the town, between the town and the school. It's about, again, 650, 700 at the school, 250, 300 on the town side. And again, we supply every single phone in town. So the phones at the police station, fire stations, not the 911 phones, but every regular phone line we supply comes out of our office. So there's 1,000 phones there. We replaced, this is probably the first time we'll replace every single phone.
Correct.
Because it's actually the
We did it in
fourth time,
batches.
because you had some phones at Marshall Simons and
We did
Memorial from when they
Memorial
built the
one
first
year,
schools.
Marshall Simons, then the schools and
So you had a couple hundred, so the first time, when I came, we did the first round, and it was about 750 phones then. And then the next time we did it, we only needed about 250 new phones. This time, we're at the point where if we bare-boned everything, we didn't go to the cloud, we went as cheap as we possibly could go, we would still have to replace about 660 phones, and they wouldn't all be Alyssa ready. They're pushing us to go to the cloud. They're saying they're not going to have on-prem going into the future. We don't like to be forced, so we really drill down and try to look, what if we keep it on-prem? How much cheaper will it be? What if we don't do Alyssa's law? I mean, if the law doesn't go into effect until September or October, we won't be required if we put it in, if we sign the contract the day before the law goes into effect, right? So not that I want to skirt the law, but if we really want it to be cheap, we looked at those numbers, and they just kept coming back to, no matter how we skinned it, they want us to go to the cloud, and it was actually coming back cheaper.
Well, who's they?
The vendor we're working with.
Who's the vendor?
E+, but it's not the vendor, it's the manufacturer that's given the deep discounts. So that phone is 75% off retail. We all know retail doesn't mean anything, but 75% off retail means something to me.
I'm puzzled, why do we care what the vendor wants us to do?
We don't.
Then why is,
He's implying that it's cheaper.
Yeah, so if you go to buy a car, right, and you look at 2 Mercedes, and you're like, wow, I kind of like this model, and the guy goes, okay, great, they're going to work exactly the same, both cars, they're almost identical, but this one's going to be less money, and you're going to get more options.
you're saying you're incentivizing us to go with.
They're incentivized, exactly.
Right.
I apologize if I didn't. Yeah. So again, I think that was one of the incentives. So no matter how we look at it, it's less expensive for us to go to the cloud. And that's over the 5 years. That includes the subscription.
You got it on now?
No, I said the company.
Oh.
Yeah, that is one of the things that we'd rather talk in a executive session about who the manufacturer is and so on. Just because of security, that's all it is.
Roger, did you have another question? I know you do.
I don't want to delay getting through the rest of the presentation, but I'm hoping that the incentive lasts into the future, a long ways, because I don't care so much about the upfront price if they're going to come back and nail us every year for 10 years.
And I think that you have a very good point too, because if you look at Alyssa's law, if approved, is going to be mandatory for the schools. So if we don't apply this, probably we're going to be forced for the next time. But we're taking advantage, if you approve, that we want to do it too in all the town, because we think it's an important feature. And I don't think that I need to explain too much.
This is a state program?
So the Massachusetts state law, it's going to be voted on in either September or October of this year. And it's passing out other states.
Florida passed it already. That I know, Florida, New Jersey, and there are some others.
So if you look up Alyssa's law and search for, communities, states that have already passed it, but they are pushing it to go across.
Could there be state funding for this? Do we know?
We haven't heard of any state funding for it.
No.
Could there be possibly? Jose, do you want to talk about the supplement, how this supplements what you already are doing, or is that out of scope? Go ahead, I'm sorry. Keep on track?
I would try to keep on track and come back to things,
Yeah, we can do that.
because,
Keep moving, and then we'll come back to the
Okay.
yeah.
big picture.
Right, the next item is what we call the UCS. This is a hardware component that we need to purchase. The existing one already has reached the end of life again. Then there is something virtual that we call the Identity Service Engine. That, I guess the best way to explain it is, for example, in the schools, we only have one physical network, but we separated that network logically. The students go one way, staff members go a different way, and then the guest people go another route. Why do we do that? Well, because we're crazy and we would like to complicate things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to put it that way.
For sure.
Just kidding. Students, they get, we kind of inspect all the traffic that they do, and because they are minors, there are things that we got to watch for and comply with the law. Staff members, they have a little more relaxed, if you want to put it that way, but yet it's a secure network. And guest, well, is something that we cannot control because we cannot go inspect on personal devices, for example. So we have to be careful on what they bring. We cannot inspect, therefore we have to kind of segregate them from possibly infecting these other networks and interrupt the workflow. The total for this is $24,329. I'm going to continue. There are
Sure,
not.
yeah.
The data center servers, this is something that we want to implement with the police department, schools, and the town. And we are including the police because I believe it was your recommendation 5 years ago to incorporate them in this 5-year plan for the members that were over here.
As well as the data center itself. So
Correct.
instead of us trying to build data inside of our operating budgets, the idea is to try to bring it out and build it into the five-year deal. So, so that you won't get these surprise things like the police department needs new servers, the police department needs new switches. This is all covered in the next 5 years. So this is an actual add-on. This is one of those big add-ons like John was saying. It's something we've never done in the past. Originally, we just did switches and APs and things like that. Then we laid security on top. Now we're layering data center and 24-hour coverage. So this is one of those big add-ons.
And if you want to put it this way, this is a hardware component, because I'm going to get to the next one, and that is the virtualization software, which is something that sits on top of this. That one of the features that, for example, we can have there is that we can move one server from one location to the other without impacting much the work of that day. And there are more features that you like.
Of course.
You want to talk about.
No, not too many. That's the key.
Right.
That there's a lot of redundancy and failover capabilities. It allows things to be up
Right.
24/7.
And the total of this subscription is $90,000 for 5 years, too.
And that's for 3 locations.
That is
So it's
correct.
$30,000 per location for
Yes.
5 years. And if you guys are aware of what's going on in the virtualized world, that's not a bad number. I don't love it, but, it's 3 different locations, and, there's a big uproar going on in the virtualization world. So they're kind of coming back into reality.
Then we have the existing switch renewal support, and this is for something that we kind of touched earlier, in which we have some switches that didn't reach the end of life or the end of support, and we just want to renew the existing network equipment. $41,952. And the locations, I wrote it, the locations that we have this, if you want me to
rattled them
say.
off, yeah.
Highway Recreation Garage, Fire Station 2, Police, High School, Marshall Simons, and Memorial. And by the way, in High School, Marshall Simons, and Memorial is not the total number of switches that we have there. It's just the ones that
9,000 series, let's call it.
Okay, the ones that were required
The
to
9
be
series.
changed 5 years ago.
Yep.
Then we go into some hardware and security renewals. Yep. That is 137,438. This is, involves also software updates and technical support is a 24/7. This is for network switches. Project management is 10,996.
Is that an outside supplier?
Yes,
Yes.
that's the vendor. And there's the breakdown.
Correct. We have like a breakdown of the products that we are asking here for.
So again, this is where the confusion comes in with the number. It's 4.1 or something along those lines. So we do a lease, and then they're also doing the E-rate. This would be the lease. Currently, the lease, we're doing $400,000 a year. So this lease would be $700,000 a year. So it is a substantial increase, but that would be for the lease. It's not the item the school is.
Which is next.
Yep, I'll let you do that. And that's the school.
So,
That's all we've done.
correct. This is the Edge network, high-density wireless, and UPS is for the schools only. Like I mentioned before, there is a grant from the Federal Communications Commission that we're trying to take advantage, in which after that expense, we probably can recoup up to, I think it's $270,000.
$274.
But that equipment, like I say, have to be to replace existing equipment, cannot have redundancy, and it can be only used in the schools. And I believe they audit, so it's better to be safe than later sorry. So this is only for the schools.
Okay, then my favorite slide's the next one.
Do we have a subcommittee on this?
It's in the simple one.
Right?
Thank you.
Subcommittee. Then we'll go to questions.
We went through this in detail under executive session on Tuesday, and we voted 2-0 in favor. That was Rob and myself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So regarding the software and hardware that is coming up upon end of support with the vendors, are there any third-party providers that could provide support on that software and hardware outside, I mean, not the vendor itself, but are there any third parties or consultants or anything that would be able to provide support instead of having to repurchase new hardware?
So the SmartNet contracts are actually only through the manufacturer. So we could purchase from another vendor. There's 2 or 3 major vendors we can use, but the SmartNet actually comes through the manufacturer. So in a sense, it's kind of like the warranty on your car. So we're renewing the warranty on the car with the manufacturer through a vendor, but it's not the vendors, if you will.
But there's no one else that would support the manufacturer, that would be able to support the software and hardware other than the manufacturer, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
That's your favorite page?
Yeah. That was fast.
Just to comment on that, the part of the stuff that we're paying for is the hardware support, which will allow us to get replacement equipment and fix to keep the town up and running. The other part of it that's the support is the software support. So periodically, there's new firmware versions that are released and that you need to keep up to date. And when something goes end of life, those security updates kind of end. So you'll see that once those security updates end, then the product over time will start to become more and more vulnerable. And while you may be able to get a vendor to support the hardware for an extended period of time because of parts that have been taken out of service and just recycling those, it's really only the vendor that can do the software support. And so there's a security aspect to this as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many different quotes have you received for this project?
Across all the products?
Well, how many, I'm just wondering, how many vendors have we gotten quotes from?
We've only dealt with our main primary vendor, but through them, we've had multiple manufacturers. So we'll say manufacturer A of a product. Again, I don't want to throw out names, but there's one name, and then, we said, you know what, let's see what this manufacturer has to offer. So they'll go out and they'll source that product for us. So as far as the number of quotes we've had, Jose, I would say a dozen quotes. So we've been doing this for about 14 months. So we've had, a different quote almost every month on different products and different, for instance, like email security alone, we've looked at 4 different email security solutions, but they've all come through the same vendor, if you will.
So we've looked at more than one option for each part of this project?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you say?
And it's all on the state.
Yeah, and they
it's all
state
on the state
approved
Uh, All of it is on state contract?
Yes.
Each item?
Correct.
So basically, the state procured it for us, and then we go to the vendor we want, and then it's part of that
They
5-year lease program.
They select among those state-approved choices.
And we try to take advantage as much as possible for educational pricing.
And again, this is the same vendor we've used that has procured us the 0% lease. So, bakes that 0% into the 5 years. So it's the same one. In the two refreshes I've been through, it's been the same vendor. And again, they line up all that financing.
And the vendor's also on state contract list, or?
I'm sorry, what? The vendor, yep.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Mike?
You mentioned the data center servers, including the police department.
Correct.
I know historically, the police department has had certain things that they've kind of kept, they've kind of maintained themselves. So this is going to be a change in that? Is it just one piece that you're taking over from the police department, or are you going to try to take over all of the police department?
So again, it's one more piece we're adding. The last 2 refresh cycles, we did all the security products, the APs, the firewalls, all that came through us. The switching didn't come through us last time, and the servers didn't. So those 2 are being added. They still have a vendor that supports them, a separate support vendor.
Okay, so you've been talking to the police about this, and they're in agreement that it makes sense for them to join this data center server?
So that was their design. So we did 3 different designs. They did theirs with their vendor and through us. When I say their vendor, I mean their support vendor, if you will, not our actual vendor. So we introduced them to them, and they designed it. So each locations were analyzed independently. And so each design's a little bit different. We didn't cookie cutter 3 different designs. 3 identical designs, the police, school, and we did our design on the town side, the school on theirs, because one size doesn't fit all.
Right,
So
because they need like a 24/7 service for the police, which is probably beyond what the schools in the town.
We did get them all because the pricing was pretty good, because we bought so much. So they gave us the best support for all 3, I believe, right? I know we did on the town side, because John doesn't like to come in Monday morning and the service not be up.
And Mike, this sort of came about from years ago when the police had to come and get something into their budget for $150,000, for $50,000 over a couple years. It was brought up about why isn't this in, and what more could we lump into our hardware refresh when that happens? And this is one of the things that came about from that, some switching gear and this server, these servers at the police station.
Right, yeah, no, it makes sense to try to consolidate, but sometimes you find a department like the police that it makes sense to keep them separate, but now we're pulling, are we pulling all the police stuff under kind of central MIS, or are they still going to have their own MIS guys doing their?
So they're still going to have a vendor that they use for support, for technology support. Again, they need 365, plus they have specialized software that they're going to need support on. So they still have someone in their budget that they contract for that.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Chris?
So going back to the phone system, so it looks like it's House Bill 623 that's making its way through, and there is in the language a funding mechanism through the MSBA, and it does say that if we were to go forward with this, that we could get a reimbursement as long as it meets the qualifications lined up in the bill. So I just double checked that it matches those, because that would be quite a significant money back. The bill also is stipulating that any new schools must have that installed. So I would definitely say for Fox Hill, if we don't have enough, phones that are currently there to then phones that need to go in, somehow we're going to need to factor that in. I'm going to guess with the high school building committee that will be factored in there, but where Fox Hill is already in progress, that probably it should be something that we should consider.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Deb?
Yeah, I just wanted to, John, I know you kind of mentioned this at the beginning, and I just want to be clear on, going from the last time, I think it was a 2 million total to a 4 million. And you mentioned a few of the items that would be incremental costs, like the data center servers, and I assume the virtual software also is incremental, so that's about 425,000-ish. And then you were talking about the breach protection. If we just did what we did last time, it would only be 160, so the incremental there is 520. So those two is about $1 million of the increase. Is the remaining, are there other incremental pieces like the phone?
Yeah, it'd be half of the phone system. Basically, we only replaced half last time, and we're
Okay.
doing the whole thing this time, so that's about 500, and then the other 500 is just
Price.
The regular 5% increase.
Okay, and then you mentioned doing the panic button phones across the town, even though it's only a requirement in the schools. What's the incremental price of one of these kind of phones versus a similar system without the panic button? I'm just curious.
So again, the price difference is not going to make a difference because they've reduced these by 75%. So I don't know if I can get a used phone for $125 right now. So, and again, I think we're talking about 700 to 300 split. So, so it's what, about $30,000, is that right? Maybe not.
That's what I remember from yesterday's conversation. It was 30,000, 37.
So 30,000 on the 907. Again, I don't want to be dismissive of it, but I would prefer to have everyone have similar phones so that both the police department know the phone, because they're probably going to be involved in the training as well, right?
Take a note.
And then one other question on the breach protection, so the 690. So and I completely agree that security has just, the cybersecurity world has just expanded dramatically. I guess my question is this like the Cadillac version of breach protection, and is there?
So it was actually the better price version. The first price we received on it was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was a 1.6 million. I think it was 1.6 million, and that's when we said, I guess this isn't really going to be an option for us, because and there was 24/7 protection, this, that, and the other thing. It was a third party. And we had looked, again, we said we had looked at multiple vendors, and another vendor had that included, had a soft option. And that's when we pushed them, and we found this other soft option with the vendor, the manufacturer we use all the time. So I guess, I don't know how you define Cadillac, but it's definitely one of the better ones, and it's directly with the manufacturer. And again, I don't want to get into the technical aspects, I'd be happy to get to it in closed session, who would be monitoring this, and who's the brains behind it. But I'm not going to talk about that in
Questions? No. Roger, you're twitchy.
Oh, I'm trying to figure out what what a salient question is that's actually going to have a useful answer. I guess one of the things I'm always concerned about when people say they're going to add security systems, they're actually going to make the system a lot less usable, a lot harder to use. And I've run through that through several systems and things that I've worked on. So,
It was just you.
so that's one of my apprehensions, but of course, there's always this overpowering compulsion to be incredibly security safe, and that you really can't argue against. It's almost like, well, I don't know, bad metaphor, avoided. I guess one of my questions immediately to the slides is, what is virtualized? And you mentioned a little bit of the benefits of being able to move things around between computers, which I understand since I do a bunch of work with clouds and private clouds and stuff. If you don't do the 90,000, that's the virtualization, how does that impact the value of this system?
All right, so let me give you a little history of my background. So way back 30 years ago, working in the internet, the first thing was you needed endpoint protection, right? Then you needed firewalls, right? And then we've added layer upon layer upon layer, right? So we have multiple layers, and last time we were here, we purchased, we went from having 2 or 3 layers in the capital budget and some coming out of our operating budget. But then we came and we asked for that big chunk, and that was the last time. We included security, and I think it came to $100,000 of that whole budget. It went from $300,000 a year to $400,000 just because we were adding the $100,000 worth of security products. And to your point, most of them are cloud-based, and there's 5 or 6 of them. What the SOC's going to give us is the ability for them to ingest all the logs and data from those. So again, if we take the SOC out, we're still going to have those 5 products, but they're just 5 independent products. Whereas if you have them go into the SOC, all that data is going to go into the SOC, and that SOC is the same place that identifies threats from everywhere, right? So if there's a known problem, for instance, even though, let's just make one up, I guess, something that's spreading wildly all over the world, right? The minute they see it, and this place is going to be probably one of the first places to see it, they don't have to see, they can see it on any one of our products, and they can work with us. We can build a playbook what to shut down. So if it happens on, where they love to do things on Thanksgiving, that Thursday night, early Friday morning, considering everyone's asleep in America for the next 4 days shopping and digesting all that food. So if something happens at that time, over any one of those 5 products, they're monitoring it, and they can, A, contact us on an emergency line to do something immediately. So we're not getting a contact from an email, we're getting a contact from the SOC itself. And secondly, they can take action if that's something we say, if you see it on this product, take that action. So that's what the SOC brings for the next 5 years.
All right, real quick, what does SO
Oh, I'm sorry.
stand for?
So yeah, that's a Security Operations Center, I apologize.
And it's something that's not in the town of Burlington on site. It's something that's somewhere else?
Yes. And it's monitored somewhere else.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be just monitoring us, they're monitoring everybody, but they have their contacts into us. So their tentacles are sent into us, and they would know us as first line of contact if they see something starting here or starting somewhere else.
All right.
So if they see something somewhere else and they know that they have access into our network, they can shut off that access as well.
All right, I got that part.
Okay.
So you mentioned they were pushing you to do cloud things. What of these components that you're talking about, did you pick the non-cloud option versus the cloud option?
Though we've already had the cloud option on all of those, on all the security products, right?
Correct.
Besides,
But not on the telephones.
no, I know, but that's the phone, it's not what we're not talking about. The phone isn't part of the security options. I'm sorry, when I was talking about them pushing us to the cloud was the phones.
Okay, so doing everything on, I would call it on-premise, is not really an option anymore. So there's no push, you've already given way.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, I just
No,
make sure I understand what's where.
I think that we can relate to this. As you remember, in the old days in a PC, you needed a software. What do? You just go on a floppy or a USB and a CD, right? And you just install it, And that was it. That product was good.
And then your best
For the
friend
time that
says,
you-
hey, can I have a copy?
Exactly.
And then I pass it to the next guy, and software companies and people who work for them
Exactly,
realize
but then-
they're gonna go broke if that's the model that they're
Then
using.
they realized that they were losing money that way because that single copy was used by 20 people. So what did they do now? Or what do they do now? They go to the subscription model. And how do they apply that subscription model? When you go into the cloud.
All right, so
Simple as that.
this is not something we actually have an option on. This is not an option.
Correct.
Okay.
No, I guess on the telephone, and I think that's where he kind of said that they kind of pushing us, is more than, we did the study of doing everything on premises for the next 5 years, and putting that on the cloud for the next 5 years. And believe it or not, on the cloud is a better solution and is less expensive.
Okay.
So why not?
And then we come back here in 5 years and they double the price on us and our hands are tied. Then you'll say, this is what we were concerned about. And we're concerned about it as well, though.
Yes.
I mean, we're not gonna sit there and act like we don't like it any more than the next guy.
Right.
Well, then you switch vendors.
But the vendors,
And that
all the
comes with
vendors
a
are selling the
huge
same
cost.
products. Right?
Huge costs, training costs.
That's correct.
I hate defending big software
All right.
companies.
Any other questions?
All right, if I can ask one more, certainly if anybody else. If you had to cut the price by a quarter, what would you leave out?
Do I get to say?
The police department service. Let's start there.
No, well, but that doesn't, that may save us contract money, but we still have to.
Well, we could say, yeah, all the servers. I mean, again, that's not something we were doing in the past. So that's about $415,000.
All right, well, maybe I don't actually have any good questions.
John, you said the phone.
I guess I somehow can answer that question. By cutting quarter, I guess we are risking much more. Look at what happened, for example, in the city near us in Lowell, not even 2 years ago. That in a matter of a month, they needed $10 million just to fix the problem. But they had the security and stuff like that. So,
Look, I think, John has the right answer, right? I mean, if you want to save $700K, you're going to not replace the phones. Our phones currently work. I understand there's a benefit to replacing them like everything else, but that seems like a pretty obvious one. I'm not suggesting that we do that, but that's a pretty easy $700K to save if you had to. It's not like the phones aren't working now.
But for how long?
but,
The phones are going to work a long time.
You can
Phones
push
don't
things
break.
into the future.
Sure, yeah.
well,
We
but
might not make it 5 years before we're back.
You're going to have to replace everything eventually, but the point is, that's not something that has to be replaced now. Again, I'm not suggesting.
no,
but-
that's all right. Then
But we
have-
need to be realistic, that it's not like everything has to be done this year. I'm not saying
No,
we
we
shouldn't.
would like to, but remember, just not replace it, we would need to still renew subscriptions and our support.
Sure.
We'll have to see how that affects the rest of the price. It wouldn't be, mine was sort of, what there's one answer. It's probably not the best answer. It would need to go back to all these guys to
Yeah, we should spend more than 5 minutes thinking about it.
stir it out.
Frank?
So how are we funding this? How are we funding this? With a-
So it's two separate pieces of funding. One is through the operating budget, which is a $700,000 number a year for 5 years. It makes up $3.5 million of it. One is coming in the schools, free cash request for 600 plus.
Okay,
That makes up
so-
the rest of it, and the reason for that was because of potential
the reimbursement? So there's no bond, there's no borrowing?
So it's in the operating budget now, the number is only
All right,
$400,000.
and we get to do it in the operating budget over so many years because the vendor's going to give us payment plans?
Because it's a lease.
Yeah, but
It's the
basically,
lease. So it's a lease, okay. All right, so my view on this so far, this is pretty complicated. It's pretty hard to really know what you're buying completely unless you're really in the business, and some of you guys might be. It feels to me like some of it's very sophisticated and provides capabilities and services that come with it just because you buy in the package, but we don't need it or we may never use it. An example that comes to mind is this identity stuff that can track different groups of people through buildings and who's where, right? So you can play Car 54 with people in the building, but do I really want to pay money for that? I mean, what do I want that for? That's the sort of thing that comes to mind for me. But then I say to myself, if we're going to buy a system that's cohesive, buy all the right parts for the security, for the connectivity, for the reliability, you probably end up spending almost as much money anyway, so I don't know how to reduce it. But it does seem to me there's complexities in this thing that will just, or capabilities that come with their own complexities that we'll just never need and possibly never use.
Yeah, probably in every software package we own, we have something like that.
So some of the location stuff. And the other thing I question is the bandwidth you can get from moving. So the number of simultaneous access points that this will open up that'll have very high bandwidth is a big number. I mean, we're going to have the ability with this to move data from a classroom in one building, large amounts of data, to another place in the system with pretty high bandwidth over an access point. Am I right? These look like pretty high performance things.
I think only the high ones that we're looking at is for the high density, right?
Correct.
And that's, I mean,
They should be located in like auditoriums and cafeterias.
yeah, but
I
out of
think in
440 of them,
No.
yeah.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if we were actually buying way more bandwidth than we're ever going to actually be able to use, let alone need.
But one of the things we're.
But I don't know how I'd save any money by making that less capable because the technology's there. So that's kind of what I'm struggling.
I guess my question to you is the utilization in the schools
well, generally
continually
speaking-
goes up. And again, we're building utilization for 5 years, right? So how much bandwidth is going to be used in a classroom?
How is it going up? What do we got, people talking faster?
Again,
More applications are more intense.
applications become more and more intensive.
More devices.
If I have to mention, for example, the student information system, Bob, you are over here in the park, it has another component that they need real data in real time. So they push it more.
Okay, well, I'm not very clear on this. I don't understand it that well. I don't think it's unaffordable for the basic stuff that we really do need, which is better connectivity, better network infrastructure, moving forward for the next umpteen years with more access points and a lot of security. I think those are things we want to buy, and I don't know how I could buy it for much less money and get the kind of quality you're talking about here. So, but it does seem like there's an aspect of we'll never use a percentage of this stuff come hell or high water, because we're not that kind of a business. We're a municipal operation with people doing sort of ordinary things, collecting data, communicating, and running applications that do something in the classroom mostly, I would think is where the heavy applications are.
Then I would say that municipalities have more frequently become targets lately.
The security's important.
So, and I think that's one of the things we're paying a premium to have the SOC, and we spent a lot of time talking about it.
Yeah.
And that's something that we hope we buy and never have to worry about using.
Well, it's like a snow blower. You want to own it, but you don't want to use it.
Something to be said there too, there are more applications moving into the cloud.
All right,
In
all
the
right.
municipality. And in the schools, I am going to say something, when you see the quantity of access points, take this in consideration. One single access point like that one has an effect of 50 feet radius and a capacity for like 30 concurrent users, if you want to put it that way, with a good performance, of course. You can put 200 people, but nobody's going to move. So count the number of classrooms and then, other areas in the schools, plus the ones that we have over here in the town, 440 really is kind of one-to-one right there. Now, do you want to put one access point for 2 classrooms? I think somebody is going to fire me over there in the park just because.
I dare them.
No, but these access points are not going to go through those, what is called, like a foot.
Concrete.
What is the length of the concrete over there in a wall, Bob? 6 inches?
Oh, yeah, no, it has lousy
So, yeah, it
communications.
bounces back. And then we have some teachers that bring the Christmas lights, so.
It's sort of, to John's point, what are you going to cut that's going to do any good?
It's the nature of the business, I guess, and that's what it is. I mean, I wish everybody was kind of hardwired back in the older days, but that's not possible anymore.
So let's move.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the direction we move now, I need a little bit of a poll here. You're still interested in some more detail?
Yeah, I've got a lot of detailed questions that
Okay.
we don't want to do here.
So my thought would be if a lot of people have a lot of detail, or if you're more comfortable voting this, hearing it as a group in executive session, I'm fine with that. We'll set it up for next Wednesday night. If you're more comfortable, I don't know how many people have significant questions or would like to get into more detail. I know we have one. So if you're more comfortable having those who may want to dig into it go next Tuesday night to the executive session with ISACs, and then come back and they can vote their conscience, and the other people you can vote your vote. If there's some.
Report back to us in a sense.
Report back, or if there's some big concern. I just want everybody to be comfortable with their vote, because it's a big number and it's a big change.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Steve and I can report on it right now. We saw the whole thing, and we know what they're buying exactly. So what would you like us to report on?
So I guess I think this needs a little settling time.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
So
that's
definitely
fine.
we should vote next week. But,
Yeah.
between now and then.
It's the pros and the cons of doing. Where are the real pluses in this that make it worth doing?
Yeah, if I can answer that question. Sure. For me, it's like, okay, if the fire chief came in here and says, I want $1 million ladder truck, but I can't tell you which one I'm going to buy or what its capabilities are, and the size of the tires are top secret, I'm going to have some concerns about that, right? And no matter how much you as the fire consultant might say, I looked at it and I think it's a great fire truck, I'm still going to have the same concerns. And I don't think there's anything else we buy that's $5 million where we say, just trust us, it's okay. And I do trust you. I know, I fully expect not to find a single problem. But that's true with every budget we do. I expect not to find a problem, but occasionally we do. And this falls exactly in that category. So that's why I want to drill down on it. It's perfectly reasonable if you don't want to do that, but that's why I want to do it. And I'll send you a list of things that, here's the kind of stuff I'm going to ask about, so that, it's not a surprise and you can be ready. But that's my thought.
John, you had a.
Do you want to try to, since there's only a couple people, do you want to try to do it in a subcommittee meeting that is in a place that's not on TV?
Yeah, we still have to label it as executive session.
Yeah, and I don't think so. I mean, we talked about everything in the subcommittee because there was nobody else there. It wasn't on TV.
To be honest, I put executive session in there, we just never voted to do it.
Yeah.
I think,
But we would ask, if we're going to go to ISAC, we'll just have to ask them to allow another.
the only
They won't have a problem with it, but.
I think the only concern with doing it at ISAC is you'll cover a lot of the same things, but we'll also be bringing stuff from the financial side more so. So it may, as long as they're okay with that, then, we should just get their opinion on whether that makes sense for them.
So my feelings were, if you guys wanted to do that, we would probably address you first, because we have a big package for them, and it's what we currently have, and they want to get into our current network infrastructure and all that fun. And you all are welcome to stay for that, but I would ask that our chairman put you guys on the agenda first, so we could address you guys first. You can stay for the whole meeting, but have your questions answered first, so I could ask the chairman to put you guys as first item on the agenda. So you don't have to hang around for the whole meeting, but you're welcome.
No, I think we actually want to do that latter part.
We can't dictate what their meeting's going to be or their agenda. We're kind of hijacking their meeting.
Sure.
But they would love it.
If the subcommittees will, I don't want these guys to have to go through it a third time. If it's going to be a component of that meeting.
Okay.
So, and you're the subcommittee.
I'm not.
No,
I'm happy to go through it again. It's perfectly fine.
I have a question that's not about the meeting. So Munis, right, the town, we do about a bunch of stuff. When is-
Before we switch topics, let's
Okay.
nail down what meeting we're going to have and when it might be.
I guess my concrete suggestion would be that we actually have a executive session for Q&A on this topic.
Correct.
Not another presentation, because I think that would take a long time. And you probably get the details you want. But if we do a Q&A with the people who know who can answer the questions
An executive session of what, though, is what we're trying to determine.
in an executive session, so you can ask.
Of Ways and Means?
Of the whole budget?
Which
I would say
one?
Ways and Means, so we
Okay.
can all be privy to the questions and the answers.
Yeah.
And it's in our forum. So.
That's what I was kind of proposing earlier on, because I think if only a couple of us go, then there's a loss of context, and also, some questions may generate some other questions from other folks who have different opinions, and since this is up for vote at Ways and Means, it makes sense for us to just have that executive session here. So
got it.
I will move to table this discussion for executive session at next Wednesday's meeting.
And we probably need to vote outside of executive session.
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
we'll vote the dollar amount outside of executive session, it's just.
Sure. Just make sure I understand the motion. Does that imply it would be part of our regular 7 o'clock meeting?
It'll be part of our 7 o'clock meeting. It'll be an executive session.
Okay.
And I'd say we'll do it first. We'll put it first on the agenda.
Sounds good. Mr. Chairman, is there any desire to start that executive session earlier?
Yeah, I'm just worried that I'm going to torment a lot of people if we do that. So we might want to start earlier.
How is that different than any other night?
You expect it in a regular meeting. This is
Oh,
going to
right.
be extra bad.
You can do it at 6.
We can start it right now.
No, we can't, because we didn't vote.
Post it.
No, post it.
Do you have to post executive?
Not part of the agenda.
Yeah.
Executive session has to be posted.
Really? What if we were talking about?
So 6:30 next Wednesday, we'll start our regular meeting, and the first part will be an executive session for this topic. As we come out of that, we'll vote the number, the budget. We've had the rest of the discussion, and then we'll move on to schools.
I'm happy with that.
Everybody okay with that? So we can vote it if we want. There's a motion and a second.
Did this, why are we doing this again?
I asked my Munis question.
Let's vote that real quick.
Okay.
All those in favor? No, let's see, Cheyenne.
Oh, you really need a motion for that?
We had
I have a motion.
Oh, okay.
Good. I need.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Can I just ask a procedural question? I'm not going to be here next Wednesday.
Yes.
Can I still vote, or do I have to abstain from this vote for this session? Do you know?
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, no, you can go on.
I think you can vote.
Yeah.
You can vote on the procedural without.
Okay, no, just wanted to clarify.
Just given that, you can vote on us doing more work, starting early. Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chris Campbell.
Sure.
Mike Hardy.
Yep.
John Eiler.
Yes, sorry.
Deb McCarthy.
Yep.
Frank Monaco.
Why not?
Steve Moran.
Be happy to.
Rob Neufeld.
Wonderful, yes.
Ed Parsons.
Yeah, knock yourself out.
Rick Rasso. Roger Riggs.
Yes, please.
David Tate.
Yes.
I'm not going to vote on this. No, I voted.
I do have a small nit that I'm worried about now. If it's now part of our Ways and Means meetings, that means that people have to show up to have a quorum.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it is our meeting, so, yeah.
So everyone can't decide to skip it, I guess that's my
No,
point.
right.
It's a Ways and Means meeting.
We can't get a quorum. We should have stuck with the first plan.
Actually,
It's just an extra.
No.
actually, John,
Right, John?
Let's see how far out of it.
All right, moving on. It's getting late.
you have the meeting, but you can't vote.
It's hybrid, right?
Anyway.
So we could have 8 people with hybrid to vote.
No, I don't think you can't do hybrid in executive session.
No, but
You
we can
can,
vote to
as
go
long
into
as-
it. So you could start us. We have to vote to go in executive session. And you could take the votes if you don't have 8 people
And then
here,
no one can see who's there anyway then.
virtual.
Probably, I'll let you know.
Because I could join that way.
But regardless, please, just let's get 8 people here.
Oh, we can't vote hybrid in executive session? I won't be here. I'll be in India.
Yeah, it may, yeah. And you can join the rest of the meeting, but you can't join executive session. And so,
Okay.
but we will need a
Just as a point of order,
yes, yes.
you can have an executive session over hybrid. You just have to have it on a different channel and monitor who's in the call.
Sounds complicated.
School committee does it.
I'm resigning. Ed's the new chairman.
We don't have enough security
All right.
to do that.
We don't have a quorum, we don't. What else have we got?
So we do have minutes.
Okay.
Are we done?
I guess there is a question about our ERP. We'd rather not say names, so that's why we refer to what you said before as ERP.
Is that okay, Roger? The financial software package.
Right?
Yeah, just
You
call
had a
the,
question, right?
oh, I'm sorry, were you guys moving on?
Or should I bring it up next time?
Let's bring it up next time.
Okay, quick question. Could I just make one request?
Yes.
I don't know how true these figures are, and you guys are in the finance world, I assume, some of you. What percentage does an organization usually spend on cybersecurity? And again, that's just a question, pose it for next meeting, not for this time, just to get an idea. Because again, I know that's a huge figure, but look at what we're protecting, the dollar amounts that we're looking at, and what percentage we're asking for on an annual basis. I'd appreciate that.
Could you see how we compare to other towns on that?
We could look into it, sure.
I think that would actually be better because it's going to be very different.
Well, it looks like it's like 7 to 20%, and I'm seeing 13 too. But then again, looking at our budget, I think we're under all those figures.
All set?
All right.
Next.
Thank you, guys.
Bob here. Is he looking for a ride somewhere? Or?
I came for backup, all right?
Looking for drinks.
Oh, we got backups in this too?
So one more thing. One more, hold on. Let's finish up. Minutes, please.
Yes.
Minutes
The
of
minutes,
Thank you.
March 26th,
March 26th.
2025.
2025.
Second.
All those, Cheyenne,
Yes.
Chris Campbell,
Yes.
That was the last meeting.
See you next week.
Mike Hardy,
Yes.
John Eiler,
Yes.
Deb McCarthy,
Abstain.
Frank Monaco,
Abstain.
Steve Moran,
Yes.
Rob Neufeld,
Yes.
Ed Parsons.
Yes.
Rick Grasso,
Yes.
Roger Riggs.
Yes.
David Tate.
Yes. Yeah, I think I want to see
So
it.
we had 3 abstentions. Is that true?
Then it will be easy if it is right.
Yes. 10-03. Approved. Motion to adjourn.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.